Hello, hello. How are you doing, sir? Good to see
Hey,
you. Can you hear me loud and clear, brother? You got the one too?
yes, I can.
You have the same book as me.
Yeah, I do. Right here.
What's up with that? They let you have a copy of your own book?
Oh yeah.
Fascism, I tell you, fascism. I don't know.
Okay. Are you not familiar with what being an author entails? Which is you're wanting to go to things and like show people books and get people books out to people. So you buy like a case of them and they like sit in your house for like years. So I have many of these floating around the house.
I should have just had you sign one and send it to me instead of going through Amazon.
Oh, that's okay. It's completely fine.
Next
Actually,
time.
you go through Amazon, it kicks up the sales rank. That's good
Yes, it
too.
does. And then I can leave a review and girls can flock to your house and stalk you
Well, you'd like to think, right?
or whatever. Um,
But
I,
yeah.
as soon as I got it, it was delayed, of course, because I don't know. There's something happening in the world that no one understands. But I noticed as soon as I got it, the first thing you say is like, this is really good for continuing on. And I really wanted to get your Heptarchia book first more because that's something I know less about. But I
Hmm.
was like, this would be more preliminary for people to learn about. But I was completely wrong. I should have got the Heptarchia, read through that, and then had a talk with you about that. But this is how the cookie crumbled. So
It is.
we'll have to continue to do that another time. And right off the bat, I'm very struck by your writing style. It's very, very nice. Very
Oh,
nice.
thank you.
Yeah, well done. And are you in fact a programmer? I did your whole master class of Enochian with
Yes,
Jason
I'm
Newcomb.
a senior software developer. Currently I work for one of the divisions of United Health Group out here in Minnesota. But I mean, I'm a contractor. I jump around a little bit. I do consulting and stuff like that.
Yeah, we go where the
Um,
work is, don't we?
well, yeah, and I mean, it's like I love to be able to, make a living as a writer, but who could do that, right?
Yeah,
So yeah.
some folks, I guess. Yeah, no, we have to multitask in life, and that's how it is. I'm a Celtic musician, like I play in Celtic bands,
Oh,
where
cool.
usually, a band needs to become Celtic, and so they call me, and I bring 7 Celtic instruments, and alternate between them throughout songs, flutes, bagpipes, you name it, like singing Gaelic and stuff. I make a regular band Celtic when they add me. So
Wow, that's cool.
it's a good way to do it though, because you can charge them for it, and that's where that plan works. But
Well, there you go.
yeah, so you're a Enochian author of Enochian magic. I did the course, Jason Newcomb's course. I was really early on in COVID. I wanted to brush up because I'm from the Golden Dawn system, pretty
Hmm.
hardcore, and I love doing what I do, but I also love learning more and doing different things. So
Hmm.
what was great about Jason Newcomb's little 7-day intensive was it did let me sharpen the saw, and as well as it was the treat. It was several treats, and of course Aaron Leach, Jason Newcomb, and there was no Ashy, right? Ashy Chassis wasn't there. That was the Goetia kid,
No,
right?
yeah,
That's okay.
yeah,
He
he
doesn't
was
know
he was
Enochian
in the
magic
Goetia
anyway.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
Um,
he's a scattered guy. He doesn't focus on anything till perfection. So yeah, best he wasn't in Enochian, right? I'm just messing.
I no clue actually. I actually don't know much besides what I see online. I don't know if he's done Enochian work or not, so couldn't
Yeah,
say.
actually, I don't know if I asked him too much about that when I just talked to him, but maybe next time. Yeah, he definitely is a master and really takes things to their extreme. So it's good to talk to people like that and get the in-depth stuff. But the survey class was great from Newcomb because it had Aaron Leach, who knows Golden Dawn system. None of you taught the
Hmm.
Golden Dawn system, which was perfect. That was the last thing I wanted to hear anything about.
Hmm.
So Aaron Leach, who knows the Golden Dawn system, taught the purist system, if you can call it that. You can correct
Hmm.
me if I'm wrong. And then you, of course, come from the Thelemic OTO world, but also you very much consider yourself probably a specialist in Enochian magic, and you like to focus on knowing all of that. One of the remarkable things in your book is the way you talk about the Golden Dawn system. It's sort of surprising actually, and I was very refreshed to hear that coming from one of
Hmm.
my Thelemic brethren. Uh,
Okay.
I'm not Thelemic at all. I'm not into. It's just not my religion, right? But
Hmm.
I really I love that the fact that there's a magical religion out there, and it's very popular, of course, because that really helps us all. Like you point out in your book, one of the things we
Yeah,
need
I
to
think so.
do as magicians is share our results with each other, and test
Yeah.
things out in the fields of probability. Um, is that the computer programmer in you that has that approach, or is it just tell me something about that.
All right. So some of it has to do with, that, I work in the information technology field. Some of it is also my college degree. I majored in experimental psychology. So I've studied, statistics and then neuropsychology, psychopharmacology, neuroscience, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And the experimental psychology approach is interesting because experimental psychology is a super paranoid discipline. I don't know
Are
if
you
you've
one of
ever
those guys that like puts freshmen in cages and electroshocks them?
no,
Are you like the guy?
that's what
Are you
that's
like
Bill Murray.
that's Bill Murray? You're not like Bill Murray
Yeah.
in Ghostbusters, like shocking the dude to pick up the girl.
No, never
You
did an experiment like that.
you
And of
missed out,
course,
brother.
I went to college after the movie, so of course everyone would have recognized it.
Yeah, yeah. You're actually older than you look, I'd say, by quite a bit. I was pretty sure when I saw you in the video masterclass course, which I'll put a link underneath that for
Hmm.
those folks who want to do that class. Plus, it's an affiliate link, so help me out.
Hmm.
Yeah, me and Nukem are tight. Uh, but
Okay, cool.
yeah, whatever. I love the magical world that I've woken up to. I went to sleep for a while, like Rip Van Winkle, into a Celtic fairy dream, and when I came
Hmm.
back from Ireland and woke up, it was like, wow, Peterson, Skinner, Ashton Chassan, you, everyone's public and doing all this stuff, Aaron Leach, and it's just
Hmm.
fabulous. Like you're really like, oh, thank God I sort of ignored shit for a while because now there's really something to sink my teeth into.
Oh,
And
there you go.
I'm a fellow university guy like you. I like having a scholarly approach to these things, especially my magic. So, um,
Hmm. But okay, so the deal is with experimental psychology, they're absolutely paranoid about being called not a real science. So it's like you're experimental psychologist, you never violate the scientific method ever. You don't do anything speculative. If you're going to look at something that has to do with anything internal, like psychology or whatnot, that get your sample size. Make sure the sample size is big enough. Get your data. Do your probability analysis. Make sure your confidence intervals are right, and they hammer this into you. So some of it comes from that background too. Is that, and I also know that, the stuff that I've done experimentally, I don't really have the kind of sample size that I could submit to, anything academic. They'd be like, well, that could be spurious. And it's like, I couldn't put like a 95% confidence interval or something on my magical experiments. I just don't have enough of them, and I don't have enough individual practitioners. And I mentioned, I think on the other podcast, the idea of having a consciousness measure. That's what we really need. If you had a little device, you could like just put it on your head and it measured what your state of consciousness was according to some scale. Well, then what you could do is you could look at probability shift resulting from a magical operation, correlate that back to consciousness state. And then if you'd map those two together, that would allow you to do it with a smaller sample size, but we don't have that
mm,
instrument. So we have to look at it
we need
individually.
like a battery powered psychometric tehilim or tehiline on the
Something
head.
like
So
that.
yeah, yeah.
It is possible that we
Combined
may
with
be
a
getting,
GoPro.
yeah, there you go. We may be getting to the point where we're going to be able to do something like that with EEG. As the
Mm,
EEG stuff, especially the consumer stuff, is continuing to get better.
okay.
And if we
So you
had a
stay up to date
situation,
on this stuff.
oh yeah,
Oh, that's very cool. A lot of people get their undergrad and then, use it as kindling for their
oh yeah,
welfare
no,
check.
it's like,
I don't know. But yeah,
no.
so tell me more about what the consumer stuff that's coming out. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a company. The company I'm most familiar with is called Emotive, and what Emotive is making is now they've moved into they made like an old headset called the Epoch, like what, 5 to 7 years ago, I think. And the Epoch, it's a straight EEG, so it just says collective brainwaves.
Hmm,
I had put forth a model of magic involving brainwaves in a manuscript that was never published back in 2006. And it
okay.
turns out that collective brainwaves are practically useless because what they discovered is that, well, if you're just doing an aggregate of the entire brain, it's like, well, but I mean, there's different areas where you have firing, upregulated and downregulated, and you have to have this axial positioning sensor in your EEG to tell where in the brain the wave pattern is occurring. And I mean, that technology and so I think I mentioned this in the other podcast too. The research I did was based on a book called Zen and the Brain by James Austin. And that was where I was looking at aggregate brain waves based on research they were doing with meditators before about 1999. And then in 2008, I wrote up this model in 2006. 2008, James Austin, the same author, comes out with a book called Zen Brain Reflections. And he says, well, here's all the stuff that the research wasn't really right on in the book. And I'm like, oh, let's see, I based it on this and this and this and this and this. And it's like, boy, I'm glad I didn't publish that. I would have been embarrassed. So,
Ah,
uh, but yeah, the
yeah.
positioning thing is really key. So,
Sounds like he'd get along with Donald Tyson.
his Enochian apocalypse thing is a little sad, but other than that,
Oh, we'll have to get back to that later, but it's not worth
yeah, I
focusing
know.
on now.
I,
He's just a
I will do
crazy Canuck. He's another
yeah,
crazy Canuck like us Canadians, man.
I will do the
Frater,
can spot. I will do the can thing though. All right, so comes
okay.
out with a book. Tetragrammaton says Enochian magic, if it's done, could destroy the world. And what's the next book he publishes? Enochian magic for beginners. I'm like, are you a supervillain or are you clueless?
I had a student once, this really lovely older lady who I love very much, and she's still kicking, I think. And if you're here, anyway, she in Theoricus, I think she came to me. She's like, Frater, Frater, look what I have got, and it was Tyson's Enochian Magic for Beginners. She's like, see,
Mm-hmm,
I'm like, oh, you don't want to read that right now. Like, you're in an active Golden Dawn temple with classes
mm-hmm,
multiple times a week. Go through that system and do Enochian when you get it in the grades, because you don't want to like focus on something else where you're part of a vibrant temple with over 100 members doing crazy shit all the time. That's take advantage of that. Don't dive into Enochian magic, which comes in later on in the Golden Dawn. And she was like, but it said it's for beginners, and I am a beginner. And I was like, my heart melted, of course. I'm like, oh, that is the sweetest thing I've ever heard. She's a hardcore lady too. She's definitely could be
mm-hmm,
spiritually judgmental of what's right and wrong, and very, French. She's
mm-hmm.
French, not French Canadian, French. And but she did put it aside, and I was glad, because I didn't even want to have to explain the whole apocalypse thing, because he somehow managed, for folks listening, Donald Tyson somehow managed to realize that Enochian magic was about ushering in the apocalypse. And a lot of people bought into that idea. My old roommate, who now runs Pat Zaleski's GD order, he really was into that. And then yeah, he comes up with Enochian magic for beginners, as if like, hey, let's make the end come. I don't know what Tyson was thinking, though he does seem like a cool guy I could talk magic with. Like, have you ever talked to him?
I haven't talked to him in person. I mean, I
Yeah.
have his editions of Agrippa. I mean, he's a good researcher.
Yeah.
It just seems like every so often he goes off into some really odd conclusions like that.
Well, you mentioned that as being the danger of certain of focusing on either theurgy or thaumaturgy in magic, that it can lead you to just believing all these personal titles and spiritual virtues. You can believe that you're
Hmm.
special, you're you know that all animals are equal,
Yeah.
but some animals are more equal than others, and you're one of those special animals.
Hmm.
And then we've all
Yeah,
seen what happened.
I like to joke about people who show up. I contacted the Enochian angels and they told me that I am like the special person who's gonna usher in the new age and the era, and I had to get serious and get in with the work. And like, yeah, they tell everybody that.
That's a great response. Like, we need you. We need you. The aethers need you.
That's right.
Uh, oh, it's so beautiful to think of it that way. It's a common trend though, and I come my academic background is I actually thought experimental psychology would really refer to the flimsiest form of psychology imaginable, but as you're saying, it's actually one that really errs on the side of hard science. Now, of course, I did my master's in divinity, so I'm also into hard sciences, since theology is the queen of the sciences and very,
Hmm.
very rooted in analytical, empirical facts. Uh,
Well, Thelema is scientific illuminism, the method of
exactly.
science, the aim of religion. Come on, man,
Exactly. So when we talk about theurgy and thaumaturgy, I love that you mentioned that it's talk about it like it's two sides of the same coin, or
Hmm.
it's like I look at it as the figure eight Ouroboros.
Hmm.
The what goes up must come down, and manifesting up and down. But it was really awesome that you pointed out some of the errors of just focusing on one or the other,
Hmm.
and you talked about how hoodoo is a syncretic form of thaumaturgical practices that
Mhm.
work primarily. What do you think about the fact that in Martinism, I have heard from my Martinist friends, there's an oath they take against ever practicing thaumaturgy and only practicing theurgy. Have you ever thought about that? Like it just occurred to me
Um,
when I was reading you.
I'm familiar with the idea. It's something that I would never do
Yeah,
personally,
yeah,
because I use magic for everything. I use practical magic for everything in my life.
I bet you do.
And it's like I use thaumaturgy whenever, whenever I want something. I mean, seriously. So it's like I would never swear any sort of an oath about, doing that. There are some magical orders who they don't make you swear an oath against thaumaturgy, but they make you swear an oath that you'll never use negative magic. I wouldn't swear that one either. It's like, I generally find it is far more effective application for me in my life with my magical practice to do operations to make my life better instead of like setting out curses that's going to make other people's life worse. I mean, that seems like a lot of wasted effort to me. On the
Yeah.
other hand,
Plus, who are
I
you,
did,
Stanley Kubrick?
yeah. And on the other hand, it's like, I'm not going to swear that I'll never do something like that. There are situations that happen in life where some sort of a negative magical force is necessary. If nothing else, I mean, self-defense situations. I
Yeah,
wouldn't want to be in a situation where, somebody is sending something negative at me and but I can't do anything to retaliate against them because I've sworn some sort of an oath. You're
yeah,
you're winding it being in the position of like somebody who does judo. Okay,
yeah.
so somebody comes at you in judo and you throw them. Then they get up and come at you again and you throw them. And they come at you again. And you throw, and that's basically all you can do in judo.
Well,
It's like
yeah,
in Austin Powers where he does judo chops.
yeah.
It's funny because there are no chops in judo.
I never thought about that. It's true. Yeah, I do ninjutsu like Ashin Shasan, and but it's similar to the Jew arts because it's mostly about you know getting them down and then
Hmm.
running away though. In ninjutsu, it's like judo, but then it adds this brilliant insight of then running away. So you go,
There you
"Oh,
go.
you're down. Run away." That's ninjutsu in a nutshell. But
Okay,
if you know,
good
and
to know.
also we focus on throwing them down in the worst way possible. If you can get your thumb through their eye hole in the process, probably a good idea too, especially if they're armed with a gun or a knife. Just like gouge
Hmm.
them and kill them because
Sure.
it's not a martial art. It's a fucking martial technique to not be killed. And in magic,
Yeah, I
of
mean,
course,
it's
in
basically like Japanese guerrilla fighting,
yeah. Oh,
basically,
yeah,
isn't it?
hardcore.
I mean, that's my
Yeah.
understanding
That's
of it.
why
Yeah.
that's why things like Krav Maga and a lot of that other really street fighty stuff is very takes a lot from it. Phil Lagar, who was the
Hmm.
head of the ninjutsu school I was under, he trained CIA people because they need to just learn how to
Hmm.
be effective. So, in Golden Dawn, of course, we are one of those groups that take a vow against doing magic to other people. Unlike Thelemites and OTO, there's no vow, I think, inhibiting black magic, as you would say. But we do get around it,
No.
of course, with things like sendbacks and other little ways of keeping ourselves safe, let's say. But we're
Oh
definitely
yeah.
prohibited from like outright cursing people or sending
Hmm.
demons at someone. So I don't know what Mathers and Crowley were thinking in that Paris apartment that night. Who knows? They were probably
Okay.
just drunk.
So question: are you allowed to build an autocannon talisman? Okay. So Mars and Saturn are cursing, right? So okay. So let's do a Mars one. Take a piece of iron, engrave it, and stuff like that. Conjure up, a Zamael to empower it and stuff. And what you have to empower the talisman to do is intercept all magical attacks in your sphere of influence coming my direction, then amplify it and send it back to the person who sent it. Would you be allowed to make one of those?
Yeah, yeah, because that would be equivalent to a sendback ritual. There's a sendback
Okay.
ritual in the Golden Dawn.
Okay.
Then
Good
we
to
have
know.
other things like we have things like Ritual 5, which, as you can imagine
Hmm.
from the number, is pretty hardcore. And then
Hmm.
there's things that certain orders have developed, of course, like every order that does good work develops good
Hmm.
techniques. And I've learned a lot of those things. And some of them they work because you try them out and they work. Sometimes
Hmm.
they work face
Yep.
to face, and you that's okay. Especially, it's really very much, I think, the difference is just waking up one day and being like deciding to being David Griffin and deciding to curse E.A. Curting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or versus, You know,
Or I'm going to protect Donald Trump by taking out all the curses against him.
Yes.
And then he's out there. Witches wrecked my car. Witches killed my dog.
Yeah. So I'm not. When I go, if I was to go after Griffin, it's not by doing something like that. It's by just simply using his own force against him and redirecting it. For example, while we were
like
doing
letting him talk.
Well, yeah.
Anyway.
I knew you and me were gonna have fun, man. No, but it's more like redirecting his own energy. We were doing an initiation
right.
with Hootie 20 years ago. He broke in through the front door and assaulted our phylax. We all had to get pulled out of the temple. So my magic against him is just letting people know what he did. That's all it takes, right? Like, what else do you want to show that someone's a fucking douchebag than to just tell people the douchey thing he did, right? We all do douchey things and that deserve forgiveness, heaven forbid. But this guy keeps doing them. And
I wrote a novel called Trump Card.
About
early in the Trump administration. And so one of the main villains in there is David Godfrey, who is very clearly based on David Griffin. Just so you know, you might want to pick up a copy.
Yeah. Oh, I will. I swear. I will read that book. You promise to come talk to me about it afterwards and help me read my brain back together again, because I'm sure it'll mangle it just a little bit.
Yeah, you know, he's the leader of the Sons of Kek, who are trying to like control the world by deploying the meme.
Yeah. I'm down with that, brother. I got a signed copy of 12 Rules for Life right here.
Oh, there you go.
Go Canada. I know people get mad at me for just having that book. I haven't read it yet, but they're mad at me for just having it. And you know what, though? Here's the thing, and this is magic without fears, not magic without tears. So there's lots of tears. I'm sure many people sit there every night listening to this podcast crying with a box of tissues and a bowl of ice cream, masturbating, using their tears as lubricant. But it's magic without fears. So like, we're going to talk about whatever we're going to talk about. And if someone tells me not to talk to someone or not to read a book, come on. That's how you guarantee I'm going to do it. I got a first-degree Scorpio ascendant. What the fuck do you want from an Aquarius?
Yeah, no, I'm a progressive. I can't stand Peterson. I'm not going to tell you to not read it. Read it.
Right. Yeah, well, I'm like, I just said this the other day, the clergy in Canada technically aren't legally allowed to talk politics. I don't know if you knew that, but free country and stuff. But like, I've always voted NDP, except for that one time I voted for this pretty guy named Trudeau. I regret that. But I've always voted NDP, which is radical left. But I like everything Peterson said online, but that's another issue. I'm not a white supremacist. I just haven't seen problems with it. It's like a psychologist trying to understand things that he hasn't really studied. And sometimes he says things that are insightful. And sometimes I'm like, as a theologian, you can imagine how I feel about a lot of the stuff he says. And it's like, okay, it's okay. What are you gonna say?
Two things off the top of my head. He is very much, everything I don't like is Marxism, and that's silly. Marxism has specific characteristics.
Oh, yeah.
And second of all, he does so much of his stuff coming out of the Jungian model, and I was a Jungian when I was in college for a long time. None of the psychoanalytic models survive what we've discovered about the way memory works. They all fall apart. And so it's like, if that's not the case, it's like, then, all right, the whole system you're basing what you're talking about on has been completely undermined. And if you're not aware of that, you're going to get to some bad conclusions. Now, Jung's mystical work is still interesting, like the Red Book and some of that stuff. But from the standpoint of science and, mind science, really the psychoanalytic model was based on some bad assumptions that have been shown to be incorrect.
Yeah. I'm a big reader, a big fan still of Henri Bergson. He's overlooked a lot because he wrote a lot on matter and memory and all of that stuff. And he was, of course, the brother of Moyna Mathers. And but he didn't hang out with them much in Paris. Apparently, he didn't really like Samuel. But I think that's because he, didn't like their lifestyle. I think that Moyna was Sam's beard, and that.
Okay,
I think
could
they
have
were
been
both gay, and I think it's obvious that she was gay, he was gay. They're like, yo, let's get married, and we'll be safe, because look what happened to Oscar. And that's what
I mean, it was done in the time. It's like, stuff you got to do when homosexuality is illegal.
It would be a way simpler explanation than some of the explanations I've heard, like the ones Zink used to tell me. I'd be like, nah, that's crazy. And then you get older and you live more through life, and you're like, they're probably just gay and just like helping each other not go to jail? Like, you know, why did Mathers
Mhm.
want to go to Paris? To have fun with a bunch of Parisian lads, you know? Probably. I don't know.
Mhm.
We'll never know, will we, though? Unless
Yeah.
we summon their ghosts. But that's another thing. Um,
Mhm.
what's the chances that you, if I said, so when you go into the temple and you do your LBRP and then you do an
Mhm.
LIRH, or you use the
Mhm.
Crowley's rubies and sapphire,
Mhm.
maybe you use your AOTS,
Auveae.
Oh, AOVI. I like that at the end as a Canadian.
Yeah, it's a Auveae and Madriox, or how you say those, or how
And
I say
but
those.
you've capitalized at the end of that word, the AOVI,
Mhm.
You've capitalized the A. And I figure that's
Mhm.
because you want people to know that it's going to be more effective for a Canadian to use than an American.
Oh, well, I had not thought of that, but the magical work, serendipity could be
We're getting a little chaos magic on it.
mysterious forces acting through us, or
Amen.
something like that, right?
Amen. Amen. So you would go into your thing, because even on the master class, which I think the master class is properly named, but also it could just as be easily called that 7-day course as a
Mhm.
introduction, because
Mhm.
after I did, the reason I recommend it is because I'd rather, before I do Enochian work with someone, I'd rather them watch that, like study that whole 7-day
Mhm.
thing. Then we have like some very laid out common knowledge for us all to
Right.
touch base on, rather than me like have to replicate 3 hours a day for, it would take a long time for
Yeah.
one person to
Mhm.
keep replicating that all for students all the time. So do the 7-day master class. You got Stenwick, you got Aaron Leach, and you got Newcomb, and that's a great
Mhm.
review of the terrain. It shows the terrain, but it doesn't show Golden Dawn Nokian at all,
Mhm.
which is perfect for people I work with because that's what I know, and that's
Well,
where it's
Jason's
coming from.
Jason's is pretty similar to Golden
Yeah,
Dawn,
he's
isn't
he's
it?
he's very similar. He's very hybridy and fun. Yeah, for sure. So when you go into the
Mhm.
temple, you create that field, and I like how I'm going to experiment with your idea of the LBRP mixed with the LRH, because that's an interesting
Mhm.
idea that I'm definitely going to experiment with, and I'm going to experiment with your Enochian A ritual,
Mhm.
A, and I'm
Yeah.
really curious about that. Actually, instantly, of course, I had some ideas about how I could do it, and obviously, I'll use the Golden Dawn Kings that I would use, though.
Right. You would want to change the order to line up with the
just
Golden Dawn
just that
system.
those two kings are switched. The three
Mhm.
secret names of God, most Golden Dawn groups I know use the same as you're recommending, right? Like, yeah,
No, it switches the full tablet, so it switches the three names of God and the kings.
yeah. Well, for the West, we're just talking West and South here, right? Yeah,
Um,
MPH
yes.
with so yeah.
Yes.
No,
Swapping air and fire. Yes.
yeah, but no, I in the Golden Dawn I learned MPH with Ragiosel and Oipe
Right.
with Edelperna.
Yeah. Right. And it's like the kings and the three names, they line up the same way. But
Right.
it's just, it's like the tablets are switched because I'm going off for Sensa and my own interpretation of a couple of D's visions to ascribe the elements rather than how the GD did it.
Yeah, so let's touch on that briefly because that's really interesting that you took the time, and this is just something that's worthy of thanks and praise, that you took the time to experiment with all of the different formulations of the great table, and you found and concluded after, and you're a programmer with experimental psych
Hmm.
background, so you probably did this. Like, it makes sense to me that rather than retest everything you did, just sort of maybe take your word for a bit of it,
Hmm.
at least a little bit of it, especially since I like your results. And that's always a good test of
Hmm.
whether something's true or not, is whether you like it. um, and you
Hmm.
came to the conclusion that the tabula recensa or recensa or recensa is
Yep.
the most effective for you,
Yeah. The
right?
Reformed 1587, the final version.
Yeah, and that's the one I've always tend to work with. I think most of us in the Golden Dawn have moved to that, or a slight blending of that.
Okay.
Most of us don't work with the pyramidal letterings just because it's too much extra hassle.
Yeah.
It's
I,
just
I
why
never
you don't
got
need
into
it.
that
Like,
either.
it's like some places, some people will make them because it's fun and looks sort of cool, but do we
It's
really
good. It's
need
good for
more?
trying to memorize how the concourse of forces is put together because it shows like
Yeah,
the colors on the different sides and
yeah,
stuff. But yeah, I haven't really worked with that system a whole lot. It's like
yeah.
I basically went from GD style stuff with the Schulers back in like 1991 pretty quickly into more of a diary oriented perspective. With
Awesome.
back then it was Casamon and Jeffrey James is what you had basically.
Yeah, I mean, I did my first Enochian magic from Don and Michael Craig in 93, 94.
Mm-hmm.
So been playing with it like yourself for a very long time. And yeah, you did conclude that the Ricenza is the most effective, but that the second most effective was the Golden Dawn system in your
Yeah,
estimation.
which is interesting.
To have that come out of a OTO Thelemite bro like you, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's really respectable because many Thelemites might be inclined to put that last, just as a little fuck you,
Well, and
or
it
because
was
they're
weird because
predisposed.
Tyson's swap seemed to really screw things up with the table of Tyson. And it's just Recenso with some of the tablets moved around.
And
It's like, why would that be different? Well, it is.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't have an explanation for that.
it's interesting. And to be clear, folks listening, Donald Tyson actually did call his table, the table of Tyson. That's not something you were just dissing him on.
Yes, it's the
He called
great
it that.
table of Tyson, and he did it by here's Recensa, and I'm going to swap this quadrant and that quadrant, and now it's mine. That's
Maybe,
basically what he did.
so
Those were the only changes he made.
we could conclude from that that is the switch necessary to bring about the apocalypse.
Well, see, I don't think so because his whole idea of the apocalypse, right, is like the Millerite apocalypse idea that you see today. And this
Millerite
Millerite yeah, the Millerites
from
from the
Jason.
1840s.
I thought you were going to say like Jason
No,
Miller.
not Jason Miller. No, William Miller, who is the
Okay.
founder of the Millerite religion during the Second Great Awakening in the mid 1800s. He was the guy who figured out dispensationalism.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm going to find the date and time of the
Yep.
apocalypse. And, so on the day, in 1840, they went to this park in upstate New York and they wore these robes and like some of them stood on rocks and attempted to fly all day. I mean, it was just bizarre. And so, but so it didn't work. The says, wait, I made a mistake with the calculation. Actually, it's this date. And so like eight or 9 years later, many fewer followers did the same thing and it still didn't work. But the Millerite religion split into denominations like the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Seventh-day Adventists,
Yes.
and some of the other religions that are around today.
Yeah.
And their idea of the apocalypse of, like they with the rapture and all that kind of stuff, many of those apocalyptic ideas are just they were things that Miller came up with. I mean, in the 1500s,
Yep.
that's not how Dee would be thinking of it at all. It's not how Elizabethan people would have seen it. So I think some of it is trying to shoehorn this modern idea into something that really doesn't fit the period. But it is true that there's a lot of apocalyptic imagery in the keys.
Did you?
And go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was just gonna sorry, don't forget where you are, please. But did you notice that retro sort of etiological thinking influence the D book by Jason Louv?
I have not read the D book by Jason Louv.
You're in for
I find, I actually, a lot of his stuff I see online is just like whatever.
Oh, well. He has a fun section on Katy Perry as the Whore of Babylon, like.
Okay.
But anyway, it's a fun book. I enjoyed reading it. I did, and I think Louv's in it.
Okay. I mean, I'll check it out. I actually, I actually do have a copy of it that I have not read.
Well, especially the first bit where he's talking about Dee. It's always fun to hear about Dee's life, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful time with Shakespeare.
He was a real fascinating guy.
Yeah. And so, he tells that story in a fun way, in a beautiful way.
Okay.
And
that's cool.
That's nice. Later on to the Crowley dispensationalist sort of stuff where, it's not just a study of dispensationalism, but it starts to read us into that dispensationalism like this.
Right.
Then that's where I'm like, okay, that's a little eisegetical for me, but more power to you. Yeah.
I mean, it was funny too with Tyson on that. So first he published a Tetragrammaton. Okay, which is Tetragrammaton is his book where he first, laid this idea out. Okay.
I bought it when I was like 13.
He says, well, and so if you do this 19-day operation, it like brings on the apocalypse. Okay. Well, by Enochian Magic for Beginners, he's backpedaled, and I suspect I know why, because all the people I knew who had done the 19-day operation wrote him and said, "You idiot, I did this and the world is still here." He said, well, it would be an apocalypse operation now in Enochian magic for beginners that would involve this, but like probably some other things. And then he's real vague. So nobody can say, well, I did that and disprove it.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
He should have called me up. I could have given some theology, like apocalypsis is just Greek for unveiling. So you're just unveiling the spirit world and therefore creating an inner apocalypse. Louvre talks about that sort of
Right.
theology in his book.
Well, right,
But you
exactly. And
know,
if you're talking about, like metanoia in the Christian context, you're
yes,
talking about
yes.
elevation of consciousness. And so there you're talking about it's apocalyptic in the sense of it is a revelation, an unveiling, within your personal sphere of awareness. And I think that's basically accurate about how a lot of magic works. I don't really have a problem with that.
Yeah, it sounds
It's
like
like,
initiation to me.
yeah, but it's gonna Crowley going through the aethers may have had something to do with starting the First and Second World War. That doesn't make sense. Okay, and by the way, let me just add in here, you're talking about Resensa. If you like Resensa and you like working with Resensa, you will love Mastering the 30 Airs, my new book. I
Oh,
went through and took the
pitch.
sigils, okay, for the parts of the earth. I mapped them onto Resensa and recalculated the names.
You talk about recalculation and scholarship of Dee's material now using blah
Mm-hmm.
blah blah technologies. You're talking about computers, right?
No, by hand.
No, by hand.
I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
you take
Wow.
the diagram, the sigils, they fit like the puzzle pieces, and you lay it over the grid, and then you construct the name based on the letters it touches. I mean, just like Hulse did the opposite thing in The
Okay.
Key of It All, book 2. David Allen Hulse, if you're familiar
Yeah,
with
yeah,
that at all. Okay.
yeah.
So what he did is he took the 1585 Liber Scientia, which is where Dee lays out like what the parts of the earth are and their sigils.
Okay.
And he rebuilt his own great table from the sigils in Scientia, which has some changes. So probably accurate as of 1585. So I'm like, okay, well, Resensa is 1587. So I'm going to take Resensa, I'll map the sigils on, and about, for the parts of the earth, about 20 of the names change, mostly by one letter, but there are
Oh,
changes.
interesting. Well, I definitely look forward to that. I do love the airs or the aethers. My first time I did, you'll like this because you're all about practical use of Enochian magic
Mm-hmm.
rather than just talking to Ave and having, finding out if your marriage is going to work out or if you're going to
Right.
become the new Messiah, um, which is
Because
always
they always
fun.
say yes. But yeah,
You are a special, unique snowflake
that's right.
because you are. Every man and woman's a star, baby. Love is the law. What was I gonna say? We're just having too much fun. Oh my God. Um,
That's okay. But uh,
the first time you'll like this. The first time I did money magic was in an aether in Tex,
okay.
and I was doing the operation with Lon in Vancouver here, and a
Okay.
bunch of people were there, of course. I have a lot I could say about that, but I'm not going to waste your precious time. But I did in that aether, I was recommended, hey, why not try to do some like if you need some I needed money then, and
Mm-hmm.
I in the aether I did workings to make that happen. I even visited some like elemental sort of kingdoms in there and saw the state of my own internal elemental things, but then I
Mm-hmm.
did money magic, woke up the next day to $1,300 being in my account from someone I hadn't talked to in 5 years, from my dad, who I hadn't talked to in 5 years and had no reason to think
Awesome.
why he would do that. But clearly the angels went over to him and sort of gave him a little nudge and be like,
Mm-hmm.
yo,
Yeah.
deadbeat, kick a few bucks over. I don't know. It was
Oh yeah.
magic, man. It was
Yeah.
there was nothing I could have ever said to him that would
Mm-hmm.
make him. He wouldn't talk. We didn't talk. We were estranged, right? But the
Right. Yeah.
magic did it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next time I did money magic was actually just recently in January. I used a Shem angel though, and within
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes, the same amount of money.
Cool. That's great.
So this stuff does have a very shocking result in our lives for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I like your
Yeah. And I mean,
approach. I love
yeah.
your
And I mean, I've
approach.
done that too, doing like the spirit vision kind of thing. You're projected to the realm of a spirit and do
Yeah.
something practical like that, with aethers, also just with the general like path working kind of astral stuff.
Yes.
I've done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotten good results with that.
Yeah, it works. And if Lon's the operator, doesn't hurt, right?
Right.
He actually took me and Chris Bennett to our first Gnostic Mass with our friend Troy Sprue, who does
Okay.
Scholomance stuff, because we're all mates, and to my first Gnostic mass, and it was like the anniversary of the Liber,
Hmm.
so that was cool to see that. Just a side note, I'm just sucking up
Hmm.
to a Thelemite who I don't have that. We
Yeah.
have we have limited stuff in common, I guess. So it's nice to connect. I'm one of the
Well.
few Golden Dawn people, I think, who's trying to actively build bridges between Thelemic, OTO, and all those different
Hmm.
branches on the grounds of Hermeticism, and we're doing the same sort of
Hmm.
work. And in my day, the Golden Dawn didn't let Thelemic people in, and I've grown to think that's a
Hmm.
mistake. We should have let them in, just as like keep your religion sort of in your own thing, just like if you're any other
Hmm.
religion, don't go talking about Joseph Smith if you're a Mormon when you're at Golden Dawn temples,
Right. It's
right?
like, they,
Don't,
they push it as this Masonic,
yeah,
it's not related to a religion. And you could join if you're any religion but this one.
yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
So, and
Interesting.
and I upheld that for many years myself when I was even temple chief, and it's sad to think, but as big as Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn International, which I was part of, also known in the States for a while as Holmesy, right? As
Hmm.
big as it got, can you imagine how big it would have been if we had opened the doors to OTO and Thelemic people? That would have been
Hmm.
smart, actually. It would have gotten maybe too big to fail. Of course, the real problem with it was Zinky Poo. So anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, he's my godfather for better or for worse. But that's life.
Okay.
We're
Yeah.
very estranged. But hope
Yeah.
I hope he sorts things out in the hereafter.
I don't
Um,
know. Yeah. I've heard some stories about him. I haven't seen
he's
direct
awful, awful.
interaction with him like I have with Griffin, but it's
Yeah,
like,
no, no, yeah, yeah, no, no. One is gross. The other's like hardcore criminal.
okay.
So, yeah. So when you say still as modern magicians with access to advanced information technology, it is now possible for us to go back to the original material, perform a comprehensive review. So when you say advanced information technology, are you talking though about some computer usage to decode parts of the Enochian
Um,
system?
well,
Or are you just talking
possibly,
about
but I'm
methodologies that you're aware of?
I'm mostly talking about, okay, we have the internet. You can go to
Yeah.
my blog. You can click on Enochian source material. It goes over to the other blog that has it. Then click on the scan from the British Museum, blow it up, and say, all right, here's the word. What does it look like? The fact that we could do that is unbelievable. I mean,
It
when
is.
Mathers was putting together the system back, the Golden Dawn days, it's like he was looking at a page at a time of the
Yeah.
diaries in the British Museum and assembled that whole Golden Dawn system that way. I mean,
Yeah.
it's remarkable.
It is. He certainly had a genius for it. Can you imagine what he could have done had he been alive today, with his,
Yeah.
and maybe not had to hide his sexuality and stuff. He might have just been a very
Well,
different character,
that too,
much more
possibly, but yeah.
fabulous. Yeah. Well, that if that
Mhm,
was the case, it would explain a lot of his loopiness
mhm.
towards the end, right? Um,
Yeah, possibly.
Etc. Um, I heard from Ryan, our mutual friend, because you did Ryan's
Uh-huh.
Practice of the Obscure, and I love that dude. We talk all the
Mhm,
time now. It's crazy. I just found him online, did his podcast. And next thing you know, we're mates, and I've, I've told him to
mhm,
interview people like you and stuff. But he said one thing that was interesting, and I haven't, because this book got delayed due to some strange disease or
mhm.
something in the world. He said that one thing that he interested him was that you work with all the seniors when you work with a subquadrant.
Yes,
Can you tell me, can
and
you teach me about how that is? Because that's something you didn't touch on in the master class, that variation. Because I traditionally would just work with the one senior that I was working
okay.
with.
It's the Golden Dawn that's doing the variation.
Well, I
Okay,
figure,
the Golden Dawn, right?
of course it is.
And so these original conjurations. I mean, you could even read. There's transliterated versions in Jeffrey James that was published in 1983. It's been out there a long time.
Yeah.
um, the different classes of angels are all conjured as groups. And so it's like you go through a whole opera. Oh, thou seniors of the east, so and so, so and so, so and so. I conjure you by the name of the king. Then you go around to the next one. You go all the way around the temple. Now you've got all the seniors present, and the seniors rule knowledge and judgment in human affairs. So if you're doing an operation like that, you charge them all. Same with the angels of medicine, this quadrant. Angels of precious stones, angels of transformation, angels of the living creatures and the elements. You always do all four quadrants. And what I am postulating the idea that, perhaps what's going on is it's the idea of each of the quadrants are moving through the 4 Kabbalistic worlds as Dee understood it,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is okay. So that's kind of a formative concept, because it's like Kabbalah in the 1500s was, you had, okay, so Christian Kabbalah officially split off with Mirandola in like the late 1300s. A lot of that stuff
was
hadn't really
1500.
reached. Oh, what?
Yeah, Mirandola, Giovanni Mirandola was 1500s.
Pico della Mirandola?
Yeah, Giovanni Pico
Oh,
della
yeah,
Mirandola. His first
really,
name's
15.
Giovanni. No one says his first name anymore. They say
Yeah,
it's Giovanni. Giovanni. We shouldn't even call him Mirandola. We should just call him Giovanni.
you
Giovanni
know,
Ficino.
I'm pretty sure he was not as late as 1500. I
Yeah,
might be
because
missing it by
he was
100 years. It
yeah,
was
he
like
was
late
friends with
1400s.
he worked with Ficino, right?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
did.
and he was influenced by the Kabbalist what's his name, but either way. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm
Anyway,
familiar with Christian Kabbalah and all of that
so
stuff.
it's split off with Mirandola and Ficino, and then like at Agrippa, you see like the scale of the numbers. It's not necessarily quite organized
Yeah.
the way we see in the later Kabbalistic systems. Finally, into the 1600s, you've got Kircher. Kircher kind of breaks completely from Jewish Kabbalah, and then you've got Rosenroth, who picks up Kircher, and then Rosenroth is the foundational input into the Golden Dawn, is my understanding.
Yeah.
And so, but the idea of even looking at an alchemical standpoint, okay, so you have 4 tablets, you have 4 states. And so the idea is how I've attributed it, it moves through the 4 worlds as you go around the system, as in like the 4 domains of matter. It's like,
Yeah.
so you've got, your, air, earth, fire, water, okay, are, you've got liquid, solid, plasma, gas, plasma. I'm missing up anyway, the 4 states of matter. I'm mixing it up, listing it off like that. But so it's
We're
like you get a
occultists, not
complete
scientists, Jim.
manifestation. Well, I like to be more precise than that, and I fumbled that a little bit.
That's
But
why it's funny.
the point is that it's like, from an alchemical standpoint, moving something through the 4 states of matter to get a complete manifestation is not, that nonsensical or unusual. And so what you wind up with is, then you're basically taking it from the most subtle state down to the most material state. And so when you deliver the charge to all those spirits inside your Sigillum de Amas, which is like a column of force that now spans all those realms, it's like you hit the thing with all 4 cylinders, basically. So you can cast onto multiple levels at the same time.
Yeah, I like that.
And it is more powerful doing it that way, whether it's because you're hitting it on all 4 cylinders, or you're just conjuring more spirits, because more spirits can have an effect too.
Yeah. Do you think that works? Is compatible? Will your book touch on it? Like, how compatible would that be with me working with Golden Dawn tablets in my 4 quarters?
Well, I would say that, probably you would want to call different ones from the different directions in the order I specify. But I think that, you should still be able to do it okay. I would say, set up your tablet. So you want to stand here, have your holy table here in front of you, and then put the tablet on the opposite wall. I find that this works really well when you're casting across the table. If you try to do it differently, it doesn't work as well. And so you're going to call in the Golden Dawn system, you're going to call, you would start with the seniors of air in the East, for example. Okay. And so you would stand to the west of the altar, face east, and you would call on those seniors. And in fact, it's like, I still have, Bataivan, those seniors in the East. So that would actually be the same names as mine. You'd just be visualizing a different element or whatnot. And so you have a system where, as you're doing this.
So are you doing fire in the East then?
Yes.
Oh, so Bataiva and what I do
fire.
is air is fire for you, because that's the Retensa.
Yeah. But important, it is very clear in the D diaries that the kings are kings of the directions, not kings of the elements. Okay.
So you're convinced I'm using the wrong kings of the directions?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Oh, really? Okay, so I'm using the right kings.
Bataiva is the king of the East.
That's right. That's
Okay.
Yeah.
So and so that one is some of them are it's like the two others switch.
Hmm.
because of the way the recensa's laid out and how you go
Right.
around recensa. But yeah, and so the directions are primary. And here would be my suggestion from the standpoint of what I know about Golden Dawn and Enochian magic. And bear in mind, I haven't really done very much of it. I've just read about it a little bit. Is that when you do the thing, and if you do this, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
when in the Golden Dawn, okay, so if you are transitioning from conjuring spirits to travel in the spirit vision, and you change your directions so that so it switches to the lesser hexagram directions where you have like fire in the
Yep.
east, then earth, and going around. Picking up the air tablet and moving it like over to the west, you shouldn't do that,
Yeah.
because now you're changing the direction the king's associated with. I mean, it's a different
Yeah,
element,
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't. Yeah.
but yeah, it's the directions are primary. I mean, if you wanted to swap something, I'd probably make two versions of the tablet, one like with yellow, one with red, and then just swap
Mm.
them like that or something like that.
No,
But yeah, I mean, yeah.
I like I think the idea of of the two forms of directions for the winds or for the planets or
Hmm.
zodiac, which is what it is, because
Hmm.
it's wind
Yep.
east versus Aries fire,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Right.
right. Yeah.
And that the idea that those are like two changing sort of movable compass things, that makes sense to me. That really does
Hmm.
make sense to me. I have no problem working fluidly within that. And
Hmm.
it affects, of course, it affects, like, you change that based on what you're doing, the reason you're doing an
Hmm.
SRP, for example. It changes where you would use a SIRH.
Hmm.
But that really makes sense. I think that doesn't, there's no confusion there. But yeah, so what you're saying is don't worry about it because the direction's the prime thing.
Correct. And also, if you are calling all the seniors, I mean, remember that, okay, well, if you attribute them differently elemental, so what? You've got all of them there anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's that.
So it works.
Hmm.
Yeah. When's your book on the airs or aethers coming out?
We're in the process of finalizing it at Pendrag. I don't have a set date yet. I'm
All
hoping
right.
it will be soon. When it comes out, I'd be happy to come back and talk to you about it or whatever. So,
That's very exciting. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna have to get your Heptarchy right away, of course, because this was written as the sequel to that, and the Heptarchy is
mhm,
something I know very little about. I mostly have worked with, and in Golden Dawn, Enochian. I mean, there's so much to do in Golden Dawn inner order work, especially.
mhm,
Like, unless you're an Enochian specialist, you usually just use what you need to use to do what you
right.
want to do, right? We work with the
Mhm,
ethers, we do vision work, we do evocational work, we do a quarter work, all of that sort of
mhm,
stuff. One of the, a lot of the main things is the initiations are fueled by Enochian magic, right? They're
mhm,
fueled by the Enochian grade openings, as we call them, in each
mhm,
quarter. That's how that works. So that's often done independently, just to like bring in a mega blast of that element into your temple, and then
mhm,
have that fairy kingdom, or however you want to see the spirit realms, manifest, and then
mhm,
go do what you got to do. Plus, then there's the table work, scrying into show stones, and all
mhm.
the fun stuff you can do. But I don't know much about the Heptarchia. I really want to know more about. That's the stuff that was found almost fairy tale style in a secret compartment in a chest. And
I'm actually not sure if that was specifically the Heptarchia. It was a bunch of
uh,
the Enochian papers.
okay,
It's
but it
actually the
is a
story. The
interesting.
story is actually in the introduction to Casaubon, which would suggest that it was the material that Casaubon printed up. And
Oh,
if it's the material Casaubon printed up, it actually is covering the watchtowers and the airs, not the Heptarchia. The Heptarchia is covered in the 5 books of mystery.
hmm. Okay.
But I don't know if they were found together and it was all of these papers or what exactly, just because the account doesn't really say one way or the other.
Interesting. And yeah, the other thing I've worked with a bunch is the tabula bonorum, of course, which
Hmm.
is, I don't know where that falls in things as far as you're concerned, but it was something we were trained in a bit, and that's fun.
Yeah, the Heptarchia Mystica is the Tabula Bonorum.
Oh, okay. So it's just we just
It's those
in short.
49 angel names, but
Oh, it's
arranged
the
into a
same
planetary
thing.
grimoire.
We
Yeah.
always just
Hmm.
called it the bonorum because
Hmm.
why? Yeah. Okay, so I am familiar with that. Probably more
Yes.
so, maybe equally so. Well, either way, I love your writing style. I love your approach, and so, like, yeah, you've got a huge fan here.
Oh,
And
that's great.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
gonna
you very
be.
much.
Hey, it's fruits of your own work, man. It's not like you know, you earned it. And yeah, writing style is a huge thing for me in occultism. Like, there's nothing worse than an occult book whose information I want, but whose style like just makes me want to slam my head into the wall.
Oh
You
man,
know what I'm
there's a book
talking about?
I'm okay. I'm not going to name this one,
Where
okay, but it's a book. It has it's so, but it was, and not because there's like Waite who just writes this really turgid stuff. This is an occult book. It's written on a subject that's really interesting by somebody who really knows the subject. It's got good information in it, but it was written in this really, really informal writing style, including things like, and now I get to go over this in parentheses, tee hee. And I'm like, oh,
yeah, you'll have to tell me offline who that is, though. I'm sure some people will
yeah.
know. But I actually was playing with the idea the other day. It's like, what if I wrote something on like Grimoires and I just was like talking more street? It was like, yo, then I
Mm-hmm.
summoned this big ass angel, was like fucking whoa, and he was like super powerful, and that really vibed my like vibrations on like. But then I was like, that's stupid. That's stupid. You're stoned. Shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of entheogens, that Enochian magic work I did with Lon was the first time I ever did magic, and this was 2017, no 2018. This would have been
Mm-hmm.
27, no, October, November 2017. Troy will know. And I was with Chris Bennett, the psychedelic historian we all know and love so much.
Mm-hmm.
And he was smoking a joint with some other magicians before the event, and he was like, I was like, no, we're gonna do a Enochian work. He's like, yeah, man, don't you haven't read my chapter on magic mirrors and Dean Kelly, like, you know, and there all the stuff. I was like, I don't need to be convinced. Give me the joint. And I got stoned. What I did notice in doing then the Enochian session with Lon, and clearly it was
Mm-hmm.
effective, right? Clearly it was effective. But the difference
Mm-hmm.
was it was harder to do because it was harder for
Mm-hmm.
me to focus. You know that experience when the tunnel forms and you like it wasn't just a scrying for me. I went full uh body of light projection
Mm-hmm.
just because it was powerful. And when that happens, I'm trained to that happens. Like my arms and legs went numb. I was tingling all over, and then I was
Mm-hmm.
in. And I was going to these tunnels, but I kept
Mm-hmm.
my attention kept wavering because my will and imagination were maybe numbed a little by the cannabis, and I found I had to really focus harder than normally I would to get to where I was going and then to be in
Mm-hmm.
X. Also, a lot of the images I picked up at first seemed to be random. Like I saw like a happy dragon, and I was like, that never happens to
Mm-hmm.
me. I don't usually see mythical creatures. I saw this other thing, and afterwards, and they all appeared in certain directions, almost like my astral senses were too scattered to focus on my task at hand, what I wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
in that space. And afterwards, the people in the room in the exact directions of those things I saw said that that
Mm-hmm.
is exactly what they saw. The person where I saw a dragon over there, it was that person like, I saw a dragon. Someone else saw a unicorn who's sitting right there. That's where I saw the I was picking up their visions.
Wow.
That's so weird, right? That's worth
Mm-hmm.
mentioning. Like you said,
Oh
like
yeah,
tell us,
definitely,
share
definitely
what you
worth mentioning.
experienced, but
Absolutely.
it seemed completely superfluous to what I was doing in that vision work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I do attribute that to the lack of the challenge with focusing, but at the same time, it's not that I was just like off in my own imaginary realm, because I was
Right.
seeing things that other people were seeing, which is just
Yeah.
fucking awesome in a way, right?
Yeah,
um
it's about your psychic senses. I mean, your psychic senses map a certain way, and when you're in a dream, when you're in trance, presumably, like you're talking about under the influence of cannabis, if your psychic senses are turned on, you're going to get valid information. And it's like, that's actually the thing about one of the things I find kind of interesting about the people who are really into you must visually scry. There is no other way to do magic. It's like, well, what about people whose psychic senses don't map that way? Mine don't map that way.
yeah, I'm more
I mean,
a
I can get myself to visually scry, but I got to do like a light and sound machine with the binaural thing for about 10 minutes to get my brain to do it.
Yeah, you covered
And
that on the master class. That's very
mhm,
interesting for
yeah,
people who are curious about that. So we'll leave it there for the master class. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
but
cool.
but yeah, it's like I find that when when you're looking at this, it's like, so I generally will use active imagination, like the spirit vision projection kind of model, when I'm communicating with spirits, dealing with spirits, doing evocation, whatever, and it works fine.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that a way in which that's better is that, well, when your active imagination is running, you're able to connect with all your senses at once. So it works
Yeah.
no matter how your psychic senses are mapped.
I like that.
Whereas
I like
visual
that.
scrying depends on vision. So,
Yeah, I had a student once. I mentioned this in a pathworking class I recently did, where a student once back in the day was like, the forms are taking these, they're just forms that I feel and they don't appear. And I said, command them to appear, command them, like under the authority of Yod He Vav He or something, to appear as visual
mhm.
images. And she tried it and it really worked. And I was like, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, vibrating high at stuff works nice for that too.
Okay.
It's like it'll kind of, you know,
Hey,
I had, hey,
I
yeah.
am. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it was funny. We talked about, yeah, okay, so you vibrate at, you know, something, and if it's like an imaginary thing, it'll kind of go away,
I
right,
like that.
in
We
the path.
I covered a lot of testing, and actually my mind was sort of going blank after I did some basic testing for pathworking beings or even
Hmm.
evoking or scrying beings, right? And
Hmm.
my mind sort of went blank with a few with some of the recommendations I would normally think of, but that's a great one for those listening. Yeah, a divine name like Yod He Vav He or Eheye
Hmm.
is really, those are powerful names to use on any kind of being. And here's something that's interesting. Maybe you have a thought on this. Often what happens is there's a deeper image behind the one
Oh, there
that is
definitely
drawn,
can
right?
be. Yeah, one
It's
image can be
there's
obscuring another.
there's
Yep.
very it's very much not just about banishing a false entity or an unclean spirit you don't want to do. It's often, it's more about, it seems like, penetrating deeper into the semiosis of the reality of the whatever
Well, it's like forcing
structure and stuff.
clarity on the scene that you're interacting with. It's like,
Yeah.
I want to force clarity on this, and
Mm.
then it does what it needs to do.
Feels
But
sometimes like
I
it's
had
getting rid
one
of some of
person
your own projections.
well, yeah, that's kind of the point. And
Yeah.
a lot of it is your own projections. And so one person we worked with, that was kind of a funny story about this. Okay, so say, hey, you know, things, they'll go away, and they got into the pathwork, and they were seeing all these like little like Victorian kind of fairies flying
Oh,
around.
fun.
And they're like, okay, they're like, hey, and they went they just kind of exploded.
Fairy exploder.
So that kind of an amusing story.
The god of Israel is Eheye, the exploder of fairies.
That's right.
They missed a golden opportunity for a good chapter in the Malleus Maleficarum.
Yeah, there you go.
If you do
But
encounter a
yeah,
puka,
so
you can explode it with the Hebrew name of God.
yep.
Um, so the entheogens is an interesting thing because we went back and forth on this.
Yep.
And I've been doing a lot of experimenting since that time with psilocybin and then DMT. And
Hmm.
I sent you the passage about where the spirits hilariously chastise Kelly, because you're
Hmm.
sort of famously like, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You're famously somewhat anti-psychedelic when it comes to this stuff, or at least you seem that way in the master class. But obviously,
Okay.
you're a liberal, open-minded guy and
Let me
progressive.
let me
So I
let me
wanted to get
tell
into
you
this
why I
with you.
said that.
Okay,
Okay, let me
yeah,
tell you why I said that.
bring it on,
Okay,
baby.
here's the problem, and it's a
Yeah,
multi-layered problem. Okay,
of
so
course it is.
personally, I don't use psychedelics in my rituals. I don't really care for that. I pretty much do everything straight myself.
Yeah,
My first rule of magic is, if it works, it works. If you've got a system, you know, that you're doing, or you've done your own experimentation, it works for you, great. I'm not going to tell anybody that they should stop doing it.
yes.
Here's the reason that I made that comment specifically.
Mm,
So, and this goes back a little ways.
yes.
So
Yeah,
Aaron
you did this a
Leach
while ago.
in
Yeah.
yeah. So Aaron Leach, in an article for the Journal of the Western Magical Tradition and in the Introduction to Secrets of the Magical Grimoires,
Yeah.
goes to great lengths to talk about how grimoire magic, evocation magic is shamanism. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Now, okay, there are all kinds of problems with that. And in
I'm
fact,
glad
in
you
the
said it
Journal
and
of
I
the
didn't have to.
Western Magical Tradition, in fact, he basically sounds like it. This is what it reads like to me. Maybe it wasn't what he intended to write, but it's what it reads like to me. Is he basically seems to be breaking magic up into shamanism, which is when you work with objective spirits, and psychology. And like everything has to go into those two baskets. I work with objective spirits. I do not consider my magic shamanic.
Mm.
Okay. Now, later on in the article, he makes the following comment. It's something to the effect of, so working with these spirits is a very shamanic process. But he previously has defined shamanism as working with spirits. So what he actually just wrote was, working with these spirits is a very working with spirits process. It's a tautology and it's meaningless. Okay. Now, moving on from that to Secrets of the Magical Grimoires.
Thank God there's
Okay.
analytical guys like you and me around to keep these mystics in line, eh?
Yeah, something like that. I'm not
We're
a
just
great
having
scholar
fun.
either and would
We're
make
just
no
having
claim, but
fun,
yes.
man.
So and so he also goes to point that out in Secrets of the Magical Grimoires. And okay, so first of all, shamanism culturally is problematic. Moving past that, his idea of shamanism, if you compare it to a syncretic piece like Michael Harner's The Way of the Shaman, there are real differences between how evocation magic works and how, Harner's model of shamanism works. They're different styles of magic. It's not that you can't work with the same spirits using different styles. They are fundamentally, foundationally different styles of magic. And the entheogen comment was prompted by this. So in the New Age community, people have now decided that, oh, well, doing a bunch of DMT is shamanism. Okay. I have literally had somebody come up to me and say, oh, well, is there really a difference between grimoire magic and shamanism? And I launch into my thing. It turns out what they were actually asking was, well, isn't taking DMT the same thing as evocation magic? Was basically what they were trying to ask me. And that's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
So I wanted to make sure that I made a strong statement about it, because to head off that. And that conversation happened to me not long before I did the master class, so it was very fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with somebody who wants to use psychedelics in their magical practice. I really don't.
You didn't come across that way at all. I think what I heard, and unfortunately, fortunately, unfortunately, once you go through the series of course, and I took lots of notes, though I couldn't find that notebook, but I was in California, and getting back to Canada during the pandemic was a trick, let's say.
Yeah,
but it did sound at one point you said, yeah, well, that's another topic. It did sound like at one point what you said was something along the lines of Dee and Kelly never used them.
I didn't think Dee and Kelly ever did. I have
so that
never
is a
seen the
revelation
snippet that your friend quoted.
So Leech's all of his information on drugs and grimoires and magic all came from my buddy who I was mentioning I smoked the J with before the Enochian work, Chris Bennett's work, which, his book Liber 420, Cannabis, Herbs, and Magic, the Occult.
I mean,
He's got
1583 would imply that it should be in the 5 Books of Mystery. I can't find it in the Peterson edition of the 5 Books of Mystery. I don't have the book that it came out of, so I can't check that book.
So, well, the unfortunate thing with Chris Bennett's Liber 420, especially with that passage where Kelly says the spirits chastise him for not having his drugs, which is hilarious. You got me. That's freaking hilarious. Like the angel's like, "Yo, man, where's your drugs?" And he's like, "I forgot him. All my bags are empty, homie." And the angel's like, "Shit." And they had to just do it anyway, which is good because you should do magic sober. People, I was anti-drugs my whole life, and I did everything in the Golden Dawn sober, even as a virgin, because I heard that was best, so I stayed a virgin. Yeah, I know, crazy, right? And it was only very recently that I'm like, okay, I'm older now. I'm gonna experiment systematically with these things entheogenically, because shamanism is when you use these entheogens. Entheogens is when you use psychedelic drugs in ritual for ritual purposes. So if there's no ritual involved, it's definitely not entheogenic.
Yeah.
And it's maybe borderline shamanism, depending on whether you're what kind of shaman you are. I mean, there's lots of shamans now. There's even Q shamans, which those QAnon shamans, those are queer shamans.
Yeah, Q shaman. I think there's only the one I blogged about him, but
I'm sure you did. All you need to know about the Q shaman is the 1 minute and 3 second clip that Tim Dillon put up pretending to be him.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I don't know that I have. I'll have to look for it, though.
You may be getting a link from me. Anyway, it's 1 minute and it's hilarious.
Sounds good. I'd be interested in checking that out.
Someone like Megyn Kelly can say that made her day. It's got to be funny.
Yeah. So no, but I had never actually seen that communication.
Yeah, so it's fascinating. It is fascinating, but unfortunately, Chris Bennett's scholarship is so broad. Sometimes it lacks the depth, and there's no notation. There's no source in Liber 420 for where in Dee's material that passage came from, and I was like tearing my hair, which was very hard to do. I
can narrow it down a little bit for you, because I did try to do that.
Because let's find it, folks.
Okay, because okay, so since the annotation for Kelly is EK and not ET, Kelly originally got together with D. He said his name was Edward Talbot, and so in the stuff from like in most of this stuff, all the stuff in 1581, most of the stuff in 1582, Kelly is noted as ET in the diaries, not EK. He's noted EK in the section that is shared from the book, which means that out of that 1581 to 1583, that would at least position the communication most likely in 1583. So that would eliminate 2/3 of the book.
Yeah, because
But
I went through, as much digital material with searches as I could, and I couldn't find, I had
oh,
forgotten all my drugs. Drugs is of course spelled
yeah,
DRVGGF, but I
yeah,
couldn't
and that's
find it.
but like Peterson completely anglicizes that. If it was
Oh,
from
does he?
Peterson, you wouldn't find it that way.
So
Yeah.
you would have,
Anyway,
yeah.
I speed read the 5 books of mystery, and unless my
Just to find it after
1,000
we
word a minute
talked.
speed reading is not quite as good anymore, which it could be my eyes are getting not quite as good anymore. But
The trick's to focus on
I
the
didn't.
the big words, not the small ones, right?
Yeah,
Or no, the
yeah,
small, not the big ones.
I didn't find it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not necessarily disputing that it's there or anything like that, but it also does occur to me that there might be another possible explanation for it besides the drugs being psychedelics, which is one of the things that I was thinking about looking through some of the other things. So what's odd about that snippet is so Kelly's saying, okay, I don't have my drugs, and then it's like he's asking the spirits for ointment. What did he expect to happen? Was ointment going to just appear on the table? I don't think so. And I think he was speaking about something different than a literal bottle of ointment. In many cases, in the 5 books of mystery, I just speed read the whole thing. The angels talk a lot about how what they're administering is medicine and so forth. Kelly, if you read through Casaubon, he reports having all these like stress responses and stuff dealing with the angels. And if, for example, so cannabis was one possibility, and opium would be another. They were used as medicinal drugs in Elizabethan England. And so they were known at that time. What if the drugs he was taking were just to reduce his stress level so the angels basically didn't hit him as hard when they communicated?
That would make
And if
perfect
that were the
sense.
case, he might talk to the spirit of, but you have ointments and so on. Basically, I don't have the drugs that I usually take to alleviate this, so could you all like kind of go easy on me? That seems to me to be a reasonable interpretation as well. And I mean, he's talking to a spirit, so clearly the drugs aren't what's allowing him to scry. He's able to talk to the spirit even though he doesn't have it.
Yeah.
So
Well, it would lead one to
so
think that maybe that, like I always say that the entheogens they're augmentation of ritual. They're not the ritual. I know my buddy Chris Bennett
well,
thinks
right,
that
yeah.
magic without entheogens is pointless. That's where he and I disagree. I think it works just great without that stuff.
Well,
and that
okay.
stuff can make it harder.
Does he get better probability shifts with them?
He doesn't really practice.
I mean, in other words, you cast against a known probability, you look at what the shift is, and then you do it with the entheogen, you do it without the entheogen, then you compare the results and you see, well, if you get a bigger shift with one, that implies that, okay, maybe something like that's going on. I've never heard of anybody reporting that though.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as, a measurable probability shift. I actually wrote a whole other novel, Ipswich, which is about basically a drug that turns on your magical abilities. And it's
I've
sort
had
of
that
a
idea before.
fictionalized.
That's a great
Yeah,
idea. I'm glad you ran with it.
And it's a fictionalized, the drug is a fictionalized modern pharmaceutical that was developed based on Egyptian blue lotus that's like much more powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, and I looked up because I wanted to find a drug that like hardly anybody heard of. So I was on Arrowwood and I'm like looking through this
blue
stuff.
lotus,
And so, and also you have these references like, you could reference like the pallid heart of a lotus and some of that stuff that makes a vague appearance in one conversation.
Cool.
There's some stuff you could do with it. But anyway, so no, a drug that increased your magical power in terms of making probability shifts happen and stuff, I would be very interested in that. I just have not come across anybody reporting anything like that.
Hopefully when my book is done and you can go read it, then hopefully I'll have some answers. But until then, it's gonna be a lot more work before it's done. What I have noticed so far is that I continued my investigation to Prague that next year to Kelly's Tower, and I ended up having to go back to Prague from Leipzig and spent a whole week there doing work and doing a series of lectures and classes and workshops, which my camera, anyway, it could have gone better, but anyway. I had a lot of amazing experiences personally, and one of the experiences was just going through their recreated, very touristy version of their lab, which was
Mm-hmm.
reconstructed. I talked to the guide and the scholars who own and run the place and contribute to it, and they have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
amazing academics in Prague. It's got a good university, Charles
Mm-hmm.
University, right? So they actually did do a lot of archaeology type stuff to recreate it as accurately as possible. They even had the blasted alembic with bits of gold on the side, which in the exact
Mm-hmm.
place where it was found, because the king, of course, King Rudolph, came to see if they finally got gold. They're like, yeah, we did it. And then they show him this broken vessel with bits of gold on the side, which it allegedly probably just pasted there to make it look like they had it, but then it blew up, so they failed to keep their money rolling in, because that's what they needed, was their gravy train from the emperor. And so
Mm-hmm.
they recreated the place quite close to how it was, I'm told, like having their garden where their garden was, and the books where the books were, and the skeleton, they had a skeleton there where the skeleton was. And what I noticed was really weird. Having Chris Bennett's bit of research from Libre 420 in the back of my head, I noticed in their garden right there, it was this earthen plot, like probably 5 feet by 6 feet, and
Mm-hmm.
it had the plants that they found traces of growing, and they were all mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to the guide, why is the only thing growing, why is their garden there? And she said, oh, well, sometimes servants couldn't get them food fast enough, so they'd need a snack. I'm like, but why is it all
Mm-hmm.
mushrooms growing up here? She's like, oh, it's just the easiest thing to grow there, probably. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
or
Well, you
or
should
or
check
they
if
were
it's,
growing
a
magical
psychedelic
mushrooms,
mushroom, right?
right?
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
so what, yeah, I'm glad that we got to talk about all of this stuff, because we're opening it up. We need to open it up. We
Mm-hmm.
don't really know.
Yeah.
It's worth opening up and investigating.
Oh,
And
yeah.
what I've done since then, using psilocybin with Enochian magic, what it's revealed to me is just, physical visions. Like
Okay.
I don't need to scry, like I see the spirits reacting to the ritual work in ways I
Mm-hmm.
did not expect. I was not going into this expecting there to be good positive results, or
Mm-hmm.
anything that I would say would be worth pursuing. I didn't expect that, because again, I don't have a history of drugs, in my
Mm-hmm.
magic especially. And I'm a very strong natural scryer and psychic type person. I err on
Mm-hmm.
that side. Um, and I like to not have to focus too hard. Like, if cannabis makes it harder to
Yeah.
focus, then I'm like, why aren't I cannabis? Like,
Mm-hmm.
every time it makes it
Yeah.
harder to focus. Or if I'm like doing work with and evoking a fairy king of midair using Yeats's evocation, if I've got like four doses of mushrooms in me, like it's a lot more intense. It's very shamanic, because I'm like rah, 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 the whole time, like
Mm-hmm.
saying, for hours and hours. And what I see then is very ecstatic and very
Mm-hmm.
visual. And with the Enochian stuff,
Okay.
it was the same way, like portals opening up. And if I focused on them, directed different things, very specific things would happen. Specific spirits were moving towards the altar, and I could just see them with my eyes. And I'm like, the next step is to do some work with other people, because I
Mm-hmm.
think, but I'm not sure, that we'll all see the same things. We might not,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm curious and I want to find out.
We did a whole series of path workings with my magical working group, with a group going into the same path and stuff like that, just individually using the spirit vision method, without any psychedelics. And we saw quite a few commonalities between the things people saw anyway. So it wouldn't
Yeah,
surprise me if you'd have people seeing some of the
yeah.
same stuff.
Yeah, or just like literally be able to point to different strands or spirit tentacles or
Hmm.
doorways of different colored light above you that are opening and pulsating and stuff. Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, the group mind reality is what Yeats always talked about. It's what sold him on magic, and why he spent his life in
Hmm.
Golden Dawn, is because he noticed that there is this thing that happens when we all do a same tatwa, where there's this group mind thing that happens, and like
Hmm.
that's why you had your experience with your path working things. That's a thing, and I wish science would
Hmm.
study that more. Do you actually know? We can flip into the science now. Why is science not exploring this stuff more, like dreams, intuition, deja vus, group mind visions? What's going on in your?
Well, okay, so for one thing, okay, so in academic circles, one of the things they have been studying is they've been doing a lot of studies of advanced meditators, usually from Eastern systems like Buddhism and Hinduism.
Mm,
And I think perhaps that's more acceptable than doing research with Western magicians because it's more exotic.
Yeah.
I mean, the Dalai Lama is like in with a lot of neuroscientists. Dalai Lama is really interested in neuroscience. And so a number of people like from the Gelugpa Tibetan sect have done research, have worked with
Cool.
researchers and stuff like that. Now,
I actually grew up, just to say, in a transcendental meditation family. So my other godfather is like the head of the Maharishi organization in Canada. So like they've also used money, their extensive resources, to put a lot of their advanced meditators through similar things. But yeah, this is really cool to find out that they just need to move on to ceremonial magicians, because we're the hardcore Western ones, right?
Yeah, ever tried doing TM, taking a Enochian word, use that as your mantra?
Well,
If you
sure
haven't, check it out.
Sure I have.
But
Sure
yeah,
I have.
okay,
Because
yeah.
TM, the basic TM meditation is the same thing we find in the medieval Christian text, the Cloud of Unknowing, where you're just
Yeah.
repeating the same word or sound
Right.
over and over. It's meditation one in the Golden Dawn. Evelyn Underhill printed it for her Anglicans to use in Practical Mysticism in 1915. Like, this is de rigueur. This is common technique.
Yeah.
It's not just Maharishi or whatever, despite what he sells it as.
Right. Yeah. I mean, mantra meditation is pretty general, but yeah. So
I left
anyway.
TM at 12 for Wicca for a good reason.
Okay. Well, good reasons are good reasons. It's like, I was very Christian when I was younger, but they couldn't show me where the levers were to control the universe, so I left.
See,
It's really what the deal
I'm
is.
the opposite. I converted to Christianity at 18.
Okay.
Super weird shit, but whatever. It's all about the magic for me. It always has been, right?
Yeah.
It's like, where's the levers? I was always
Exactly.
curious. I was always curious about what priests, those dudes in black, were new walking around their churches and around the street, and they had social power and respect and these mystical knowledges and stuff. I was always curious. So I went to seminary and got my MDiv and trained in an Anglican church, started Roman Catholic, switched to Anglican after I got divorced, as one does. And,
well, Anglican is probably the closest thing to a Hermetic church left in the world. I mean, the Elizabethans were involved in putting that together. So, there's that out there.
I still do spiritual direction for Anglican seeking holy orders, apparently. That's still something I apparently do for some reason. But no, I'm halfway through Tony Fuller's dissertation on Anglo-Catholic clergy in the Golden Dawn, and it's fascinating. There was a lot of them, eh? I was like very churchy by the end. Cool. So back to science and what experiments are going on. Do you know?
So, much of what's going on is they're continuing to do research on meditators with EEGs, which continue to get better, and functional MRIs are the main tools that they use. They look at what's going on in the brain. So like you'll have a meditator and they'll indicate they've reached some sort of like a samadhi type state. They have a button that they click.
Okay.
And then what they do is they say, all right, so let's look at that. What does the brain look like when that's happening? And they've identified, some of the areas in the brain where you see very heightened firing, like well into the gamma range, and then you see suppression of other areas. And they're continuing to look at that, trying to tease out what the individual differences are to see if they can come up with a commonality in terms of like an EEG template for a samadhi type experience. Now, my theory is that if you can identify that samadhi type experience, the samadhi type experience goes both ways. So when that happens, the microcosm and macrocosm emerge together. And that means that a person in that state should be able to throw a spell and have it be more powerful. That is, have a bigger probability shift in a thaumaturgic sense. But that research isn't really going on.
It's still baby steps, sort of, or just?
Pretty much, yeah. The CIA declassified a whole bunch of stuff that the government did with their psychic research program, and I have yet to paw through all of that. But
and that,
it's
I said,
there was a lot.
That new Psychic Spies documentary really does make it possibly obvious that they're still doing that program. They faked the death of their main psychic, and it's still going on happily and merrily and very effectively. And the reason they started poo-pooing psychism, of course, is because they don't want other countries realizing how effective it is.
Yeah,
that's an argument, and I'm curious, but it sounds like it might be true, because we all know remote viewing sort of works. Do you know that guy who did was offered the $1 million for whoever could prove psychism?
Frickin'
Yeah.
Randy,
Yeah,
yeah.
that fuck that guy, right? So I actually saw an interview with some people have always told me, well, that's the proof that everything you're talking about can't be proven. Otherwise, you'd make $1 million. I saw an interview with him where he flat out says he set it up in a way so that there's always a loophole and no one could ever get the money. And that he
Right.
also didn't
Well,
have it. So he's just a big liar. And if you look at the top stats from the top people who went to prove it, their top
mhm,
results are 80, 90% across the board. Like,
yeah.
that's like, what
Here's
else do you want?
yeah. Here's the thing with Randy. Okay, Randy was a paranormal investigator before he ever founded PsyCop. So he knew something about psychic abilities and stuff going into it. I have found that under good conditions, if I could throw spells at like raw probabilities, like lottery numbers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I could throw about 100 to 1 shift, and that's pretty good, right? Here's the thing though. The way Randy's preliminary test, you have to pass the preliminary test before you could even take the real test, is set up with a probability gradient of 1,000 to 1 against. In other words, he had some idea of what the probability gradient you could do with this, and he deliberately set his preliminary test 10 times higher. And then for the money test, that's set up to be 1,000,000 to 1. So it's like, I
He's full
can't
of
throw a
shit.
million
The
to
guy was
one.
full of shit. He was
I
always
can't
full of, oh
reliably
my
throw
God.
1,000 to 1. But
So
the
why did
fact
he
that I can
do it?
throw 100 to 1,
Isn't
uh,
it?
I can tell you why. I know.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Tell me why this
so
guy's such a twat.
this is what
Pardon
happened.
my French.
So back in back in the 80s, after the Uri Geller thing, he got really famous. Okay. And it is the spoon bending thing, that is a magic trick. On the other
Yeah.
hand, there have been other tests of Geller. It looks like he does have some legitimate psychic ability, but it's like some of the stuff he was doing was stage magic, and that's how he got caught. And
Yeah, those guys mixing the two together did us a great disservice.
yeah. And so the thing is that Randy decided, all right, well, what we're going to do is we're going to set up this institute, and what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that people who are like magicians and stuff, can't come in and fool scientific researchers, because Geller was able to do some stuff that probably wasn't actually psychic. He was probably just messing with the equipment when they did some of the tests, right?
Yeah.
All right. So there were a bunch of scientists who said to Randy, hey, we agree with you. We want to make sure that our methods are this good. So, can we come to your institute, and can you train us, how to spot these people? And Randy said, oh no, I can't do that. That's stage magic, and those are trade secrets. You're going to have to hire my people as consultants at the rate I specify to monitor your experiments.
Oh,
That's what he was trying to do, because basically in the 80s, stage magic was dying. And so, in terms of stage magic shows, they weren't popular. He was trying to establish them as professional debunking consultants. That's why he did it.
you want that paper?
Follow the money, man. You usually can.
Yeah, baby. Damn. Damn, yeah. I used to teach at the Golden Dawn Temple, Tahuti. I started teaching practici, just very basic stuff with moving
Mhm,
dowsing rods. And of course, if you put a pin through foam and bend some paper and put it on that,
mhm,
that's not too hard to influence. And if you're worried about wind, put a cup over it. Those are the big
mhm,
sort of things that I always tell people to experiment with. And what I've
mhm,
noticed is something that Rudolf Steiner noticed, I think. And I was a K through 12 Waldorf school kid, of course.
mhm,
Um, and what I notice is that yes, our super senses do extend beyond what we know the five senses to extend beyond,
mhm.
but not necessarily that much. Just because they go a bit
Right.
beyond what we think they go beyond, doesn't mean they can go way beyond. Just like, Franz
Right.
Barden hypothesized many things, but no one's thrown a fireball that we know of. And if anyone says that
Yes.
they can and can't demonstrate it, well, fuck off.
And skeptics pull that one out all the time. It's all,
Yes.
their arguments are always based on the assumption, well, if you could do anything paranormal, doesn't that mean you could do everything
Yeah.
paranormal? In other words, like, oh, well, if you're able to do magic, why haven't you won the lottery? Well, the Powerball lottery is 100 million to 1 against probability shift, and I'm stuck down here at a lousy 100 to 1, which works great in my regular life,
Yeah.
but it's not going to overcome that.
Probably the wisest thing my dad ever said, or one of the few things, was that he just buys one 649. That's the lotto we have up here. He buys just
Mhm.
one, right? Because he's like, if you don't buy one, your chance is zero, right? If
Right.
you buy, you have the best chance you have is just getting one. right? Then you're
Mhm.
at least in the game. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but are you someone who buys
If
lottery
you do,
tickets?
I've experimented with multiples, and it seems like the spirits get kind of confused with the numbers if you buy more than one.
Oh,
I've
really?
actually had my best results when I bought a single ticket and they were able to focus on a single set of numbers. So like if you do 5, it's like
You,
make this number come up in one of these sets of 5. They seem to have a
mm,
much harder time understanding that.
you heard it
So
here
yeah, if I
first,
buy it, I
folks.
buy one, I do the spell. Yeah.
For all those people waiting for their $1,400, I mean 2,000, I mean 1,400, I mean whatever it is,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Sorry about the state of your country, brother. We're all very sad to see what's going on. It's
Yeah.
heartbreaking, really, like because especially when like other countries, it's like one of the few times in the world where like the other countries are like really doing a lot better, which is weird.
Yeah.
Sort of like what happened to American exceptionalism, or at least
I I
good-hearted
voted against the guy,
decency.
man. I did.
Bernie
It's
or against Biden?
against no against Trump, man.
Oh, isn't Biden the reason you guys don't? Well, we don't have to get into that, but either way, I think if you guys had Bernie, but whatever, who knows? I don't know American politics.
No,
I think
I voted for Bernie in the primaries too. But
everyone loves Bernie.
um
Yeah,
yeah. But and no, I mean Biden is not as progressive as he could be. I would agree with you on that. On the other hand, he's really only been in office a month. That's the other thing. It's like much of the COVID response is like, was screwed up way before he got in there.
like I said, I consider myself highly progressive, but that word means different things than it used to for me. So I don't even know what to say anymore when it comes to that stuff. And I've said enough
Yeah.
recently to just bite my
Oh
tongue and
yeah,
be like,
no,
focus
it's
on the magic. I don't know. I don't know
yeah,
anymore.
focusing on the magic is good.
But someone today did send me a birthday present. I have my little wish list because I'm an Aquarius, and I was
Hmm.
shocked that this is the book they sent me, but it's one by Umberto Eco. I've always wanted to get, and never read or had, and it's beautiful. It's this tiny little book
Oh, there you go.
by Umberto Eco. And if anyone knows how to spot a fascist, it says How to Spot a Fascist by Umberto Eco for the listeners.
Yes.
If anyone knows how to spot a fascist, it's probably an Italian. Let's face it. So.
Yeah, you'd think, right? It's like, whereas,
Oh.
yeah, us down here in America, we got stuck with Il Duce. So, it's like,
Yeah. Well,
but
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I could say things, but best not. We have way more cool things to talk about. I'd like to
of
do
course we do.
a little bit. I'd like to talk a little bit about the like Thelema OTO versus
Hmm.
Golden Dawn as methodologies, as schools for magic. Yeah, where to start with that? What's your take on the relationship today, and how do you see the potentials future going with people who are thelemic or in the OTO versus people who study magic in the Golden Dawn? Because like, again, people need to really realize that the Golden Dawn is a school that it's in the
Right.
initiation that they tell you in the portal initiation you are no longer in the Golden Dawn anymore. Like
Hmm.
it's
Right.
like, so a lot of people ask me like, are you still in the Golden Dawn? I'm like, no, I graduated in 1999, baby. Like, come on, I've
Hmm.
moved on with
Yeah.
things. It's Hogwarts in my mind. It's Hogwarts. It's a
Hmm.
great basis that touches a little bit on a lot of things. Hopefully you're in an
Hmm.
active temple where you have classes that go more in depth based on teachers'
Hmm.
specialties and knowledge. But overall, it's just a great bedrock for people. How
Hmm.
much magic, and then there, of course, there's recent critics of OTO and having, or AA not having nearly enough education, or not even the education that's promised. Like I talked to Marco Visconti. I know he's a controversial figure, but he pointed out that yeah, that my experience was sort of accurate in his opinion, that there not even isn't the basic education uh, that is promised being given. But you are a very experienced and practiced magician and hardcore, and I love it. And so is it just about certain groups are weaker at teaching than others, or is there really, what's going on with OTO as
Here,
far as
so
teaching magic goes?
here's what I would say. Okay. One of the big differences between OTO and schools like the Golden Dawn, or even like the AA, I have never been involved in any of the AA groups, so I'm not
Oh,
that
really?
familiar with them.
Oh,
I've
wow.
just
So you're
been in the
Thelemic
OTO.
OTO, but not AA.
Right. Um, so in the OTO, I would not say that it's quite correct to say that education that is promised is not delivered. As in, so we do have classes, we do have, you get plenty of study material that you can talk to people about with degrees and so forth. But here's the difference. The OTO is not a testing order.
But
Okay. And so what that means is that means that the paradigm for teaching is very different.
yeah,
And it also means that you can go, right through what we call the man of earth grades and never study anything if you just want to go through the
is
grades.
that basically the 5 elements?
Um, it's
Matter of
more
Earth?
closely related to activating the chakras in a particular order. And you can find that on our
Yeah,
website,
because Crowley
like
did
which
go quite
chakras are
Eastern.
attributed to what degrees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Um, but so the thing about that is we give you plenty of stuff to study, or okay, at least we do in the United States. I have not seen what other jurisdictions do. Okay, in the US under US Grand Lodge, you get all sorts of stuff to study and work on when you take a degree. But it's up to you whether or not you do it. And so, as you could see, well, there are cases where somebody could say, I'm a so and so OTO, but that doesn't necessarily mean they've studied the material, which isn't true in a school like the Golden Dawn. But I do think that from the standpoint of, new eon sort of teaching, what's really cool about the OTO is that if you do put the work into it, you can get a lot out of it.
Yeah,
And furthermore, you could go to the lodge and say, hey, I'm interested in studying this particular kind of magic. Has anybody done it? And somebody probably has. So you can sit down and you can compare notes rather than it being dependent on like the order of some curriculum or something like that, which, in the AA system, my understanding is the order of the curriculum is they have that type of thing, kind of like what you have in the Golden Dawn, but I don't know
just
it
101.
firsthand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which
But
means you're really at the mercy of how good your teacher is for above you in the AA, sort of.
um,
Yeah,
yeah, to some extent, if to the degree that they're run like that. And I mean,
yeah.
you've got some stuff in Crowley's AA description, which is kind of silly, especially in the modern era, which is everyone involved in the AA should proclaim their membership in it. But the only person you should know in the AA is your superior. And like your one student you bring in.
But
How do you do both?
Crowley didn't like paradoxes, did he?
Yeah, it's like it's something that you could do pretty easily as long as your group remains small and marginal.
It
But
reminds
if
me
your
of
group were to get to any size, you're like, how could you avoid running into these people? I mean, even in a specific city, I mean, given that occult communities are the size they are, it's like, how is that even possible? And so I think, I don't know, but I think um, some of that has been somewhat relaxed in some of the AA and AA inspired groups. I don't know that for sure.
Hmm,
OTO is like there's like no problem knowing anybody,
yeah.
and
Well, it's a
you could
lifelong
study
fraternity, and that's the strength that
Mhm.
you're talking about, sort of like that. And I can't believe I sound sort of like I'm promoting OTO. People, some people are probably like, "What the fuck's RC doing?" But it's like, no, this is a strength of a lifelong fraternity. It's a group you're always part of. There's never any pressure for you to do this or that, and you
Mhm.
can just hang out and study and hang out with magical people. And that always seemed, I always felt sort of gypped that I didn't. Oh, shit, you can't say that anymore. Bleep. No, whatever. Come on, people, give me a break. I said that word. It's not meant to be said. Um, you know, you can, yeah, we don't really have that sort of lifelong hangout of just people who are into magic without pressure being applied for them to necessarily finish the
Mhm.
system and stuff. So it's an advantage to the OTO members who have that. The only thing that comes along with that apparently is you really do sort of have to be thelemic. I mean, if you don't like Thelema, then that's gonna be a problem. So you have to have that
Well,
split.
if you were a Golden Dawn practitioner and you were like an esoteric Christian or something like that, but you still wanted to come and join the OTO as a fraternal order of magicians, we wouldn't necessarily reject you for that reason. Well,
Exactly.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's something I
yeah,
want people to know.
yeah. I mean, if okay, so if you have an issue with, taking an obligation on the book of the law or something like that based on your religion, well, then, that perhaps would be an issue.
Yeah.
Um, I very much
I
see
would have
Thelema.
I know I could never do that.
Mhm.
But I've been duped before. I was duped by the Freemasons. They were like, there won't be any British thing in your initiation. And then they lead me up to an altar with a Bible on a British flag. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And they're like, gotcha. They didn't really say that, of course, but I was pissed
Oh,
off.
really?
Actually,
British flag. Wow.
afterwards I found,
We're not allowed to talk politics in our lodges down here.
yeah.
There's no
See,
politics in masonry in the
I talked
US.
to other top Masons. They're like, dude, they should have sent you to an Irish craft lodge and you would have had an Irish flag. I was like, that would have been so hardcore. I would have been like the most excited new member they would have had. I was 24, 25 at the time. Too bad they fucked up. They were so eager for new members, they went against their own interest by betraying their word to me. And again, if you're
Yeah.
going to initiate someone into Freemasonry, the last thing you should probably do is start it off by lying to their face.
Yeah. Well, this entire system is about integrity and honor, and let me now lie to you. It really doesn't make sense.
Yeah, right. And then the whole rest of the night was in the common room having people buy each other whiskeys and toasting the Queen at every drink. A big portrait of the Queen on the wall, who I think's like
Yeah.
demonic. So like, if anyone's a reptilian, I don't believe in reptilians, but if anyone is, she's a reptilian. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
But no,
man.
in the states we don't do that. Lodges are apolitical,
Yeah,
and
it's probably best.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, welcome to Canada, baby. We put the Queen everywhere. So yeah, this is awesome. This is so great. I have so much to think about and study. What's some of your main occult influences these days? What are the authors you really like who are coming out, and some of your old favorites? Like, I know there's a lot of people who listen to this who are finding their path and trying to move down it. And that's what I really like to encourage. In fact, a lot of the time I just like to hear a guest spiritual story. Like, that's something that really interests me. What are some of the main books that guided you on your spiritual journey? Because you've been on it a long time.
I would actually say that, in a lot of cases, so I was doing Enochian before I was in the OTO. So, I mean, looking back at the original Enochian sources, Jeffrey James, very influential. The Enochian Evocation of Dr. John Dee. Looking at the diaries themselves, I mean, it's not necessarily the kind of thing a beginning magic person would necessarily do. Let me see. A good, really beginner book that some people like, some people don't, I think, is The Living Kabbalah by Will Parfait. I like that one. I read that one when I was like 18 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
That was a really early one. I mean, I also come from a family that's had magicians in it.
Really?
So
Let's
it's
talk about
like
that.
my great grandmother was a member of the Brotherhood of Light, not the Brotherhood of Luxor or one of the 1800s ones.
Right.
This would be the Brotherhood of Light, founded by Albert Benjamin in like the 20s or 30s. And she was a professional astrologer and medium and all this kind of stuff. So I grew up, hearing stories about, this great grandmother who was a wizard or whatever. I never actually met her. She died like a year and a half before I was born. But one of the things that I thought was helpful is that, so growing up that way, you don't have any of this negativity about magic dumped on you at all. It's like, my parents were, they were difficult and like really difficult in a lot of cases in other ways, but magic was never something that they had an issue with.
Yeah.
I had
My dad would
Ouija
take me on
boards
walks
when I was in high
and
school.
tell me about the 22 cities that you learn in the advanced TM organization training course we have to go
Right.
off.
Yeah.
And there's 22 cities, and I was reading Don Craig, so I was like, what the shit? Is this all part of the same stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. He had
So
other areas of problem, but yeah, Ouija boards. Have you had much results from that?
I've had a lot of results from it, and it taught me to test spirits really good. It's like spirits. So spirits can read your mind, and they like to lie. So if you're trying to,
that's what it should say on the back of the box. Ouija. You flip it over. Spirits. They can read your minds, and they like to lie. Have fun with the
They
whole
will
family.
basically do anything to keep you talking. They will just constantly tell you what you want to hear. They'll tell you, oh, you're the awesome chosen one and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, part of the problem with Ouija boards is
tell you about their lives.
Yeah, much of the problem with Ouija boards is the easiest spirits to contact are these ones that are kind of just floating around in the earthbound realm. And they're either the ones who are like too messed up and attached to things to move on, or they're not smart enough to figure out how to move on. Or it's kind of like, it's like the spirits that are like together and know what they're doing move on. So what's left behind isn't really their best, And so the thing is,
the spirits that you can easily contact is they tend not to be the best and smartest spirits.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, so, oh yeah, I got like all kinds of material from them that I thought was really interesting. And it's like, yeah, but okay, you start testing it. No, wait a minute. They aren't like testing out properly. And so
Yeah.
that informed a lot of my later magical practice is that, oh, okay, so I know all about this. So, now I have that experience going forward. In college, I read a lot about the Hermetics, Grippa, Bruno, and Dee. I like their stuff a lot. I studied a lot of Jung when I wasn't studying like neuroscience. And so,
Mm.
because I did the experimental track instead of clinical, but I also just took classes on Jung because I liked Jung.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I mean, I would say that then, okay, well, when I got into the OTO, I would say actually, well, so I read actually Crowley's Magic and Theory and Practice when I was in college. I didn't really get it the first time through.
Yeah.
When I actually joined the OTO and came back, I'm like, oh, that's what he's talking about. This makes perfect sense. Just Crowley, you got to read Crowley a couple of times. He's kind of dense
Yeah.
and hard to follow sometimes.
Just last year,
And
during the fires in California, I was evacuated twice for both of those fires, and I found a first edition of Crowley's audio hagiography, and I started reading. And I hadn't really
hmm
read Crowley since I was 12, 13, 14, 15.
hmm
I just stopped reading him when I joined the Golden Dawn at 15. I know that's weird, but yeah. And so I'm reading him now as an adult, as a 39-year-old, now I'm 40, and it's so different. And it's a
hmm
very much an eye opener of the kind of the full human being he sort of was, even though it's just through this one lens of his utterance.
hmm
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Anyway, sorry to cut you off.
Oh yeah, and I guess I would also say as far as like beginner books that are good introductions to the Thelemic system, I mean, of course, I'd recommend, Lon DeKett's book,
Yeah, Lon's great.
the Magic of Aleister Crowley. That's fantastic. It goes over the basic rituals and stuff like that. I don't agree with Lon 100% on how you do some of the rituals, but he explains stuff really well. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that if the differences that I have with him turn out to be things that work better, I think people will see him and figure him out eventually. And if his stuff works better for more people, that's fine too.
Yeah, people need to remember you got to start somewhere. Like, just start
Right.
somewhere, and once you've filled up a few years of diaries, you're gonna have a better sense of where you want to go,
hmm
and who you want to go there with, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
What sort of lies ahead with you, and tell me about the heirs book you have coming on, the Aethers. How can you go more in depth into Aethers or heirs?
Well, it's a system of political magic designed to influence governments of countries. A lot of people don't know
No, it's
that.
not. Yo, that's what you're doing. I've
And
talked
that's
about
what
that
it
before
is.
on my yeah, but I've talked about that before on my podcast. I've talked about
hmm
doing that. Like, I might not be able to legally talk politics as a Canadian clergyman, but
Oh,
but
I have a whole
I can do
methodology
Enochian
for it.
magic to influence things as
hmm
I think they should be influenced. The Uyghurs, you know, China concentration
hmm
camps. There's stuff. So I've been dying for someone to do more on that, and that's what you're doing.
That's essentially what the entire book is.
Wonderful. So you and me can now start doing magic to fight against each other politically.
And in theory, our
Yeah.
capitals are in the same part of the earth. So it's kind of like we'd be like,
Yeah, no, no,
in the new
I'm
world, the parts are huge.
yeah, no, I'm more interested in trying to bring, healing and relief to people in severe situations of
hmm
suffering, like the rise of new death camps and genocide. That's more of
Yeah.
an interest to me
That
than
would that
to
would be
mess
a
with
good thing to
I,
oppose.
I think
Yes.
I don't see the Canadians, I don't think see Canada and the US political systems as being that hard done by. It's sort of we've made our own beds in a way, and we're still doing pretty well compared to the rest
hmm
of the world. I think there's other people
Yeah.
that could use more help than us, but it's a matter of
hmm
perspective, and do what thou wilt, right?
Yeah. Well, that's my take on it.
Awesome, man, dude. I'm so glad we're talking. It's so much fun. Like, you also, very cool thing that you did. At first, I was like almost taken aback, but then I was like, but RC, that's exactly, you were just arguing the other day in your class to do what he did in his description of the LBRP, and I was like, but at first I was upset that you didn't include the sign of the Entra, the sign of silence for the
hmm
LBRP, like sign of Horus, sign of Hippocrates, and you don't in your thing. And at first I was like, oh, he left that out, but then I was like, that's what I was just saying to people, that maybe it should be left out because they are grade signs. That's what a lot of people don't realize about
hmm
the sign of the Entra and the sign of Hippocrates, along with the LVX. Those are grade signs that you are initiated into through those ceremonies. So it
hmm
doesn't necessarily make sense to do grade signs that you haven't been initiated into. Just like if I see what the Master Mason handshake is, does that mean I should start using it because that gives me access to those secrets? No, it would be offensive to use it because I haven't even been initiated into that yet. So that was my sort
And
of thinking. So it was really cool to see that you didn't include the sign
yeah.
of the
Now,
infinite signs.
my
I want
thinking
your
is
thoughts on
slightly
that.
different on
Well,
that.
I figured,
I mean, I think
yeah.
they're okay. So, like for in the Star Ruby, we do that. The Star Ruby, you do enter or silence for
Sure.
the quarters when
Sure.
you do the pentagrams. Star Ruby, you're flinging the pentagrams rather than tracing them.
Yes.
But okay, so here's my thought on the lesser ritual, the pentagram. I did for a number of years do it with the enter or silence. But so I've also studied Chinese Qigong in addition to ceremonial magic.
Yeah, that's a
And
whole
so how
conversation
I
that I'm very glad you had on Praxis of the Obscure. People, check out Scott Stenwick's interview on Praxis of the Absurd, where he goes into Qigong quite in depth. I love that. Thank you.
so how I do it when I do a lesser ritual, the pentagram, instead of tracing it and then doing like an enter or silence thing. So I put my hand down. So I link my body like the orbit, which you're tongue to the roof of your mouth, visualize the energy cycling like this. I bring my arm down like this and twist my spine to that point on the pentagram. And I'm going to do that as I inhale. And then as I exhale and vibrate the name as I trace, I am shaping the chi into the pentagram. And then I just come to the center and rest for a minute and then move on to the next piece of the circle.
Yeah.
So it's like you're putting energy at the quarter into the pentagram. So that's how I do it.
That's what a
than
lot of us do in the Golden Dawn. It's just something that we encourage each other not to do in the beginning, like trace the pentagram, then sign the. But you see people, it's because we're doing so much ritual work. Inevitably, eventually, it's like, oh, return, and you then, stab it or whatever. Or the whirl is a common thing into the center of the shape. But yeah, the vibrating with the tracing is something that's commonly done. I don't think I've talked about that before, but people who've watched me do ritual work, they can see, sometimes he's vibrating while he's tracing the symbol. It's like, yep.
Yeah, and you want to see me do some
technique.
of that stuff. You could take I do these elixir rituals for Leaping Laughter. We broadcast them on Facebook.
Yeah.
And you get to check out the Leaping Laughter page on Facebook. Also on my blog, I'll include you'll go Elixir Right. There are videos of them. You can see me do the lesser pentagram, and then I have a custom version of the lesser hexagram that we wrote in my magical working group. So you have a different keyword analysis based on a ritual that Benjamin Rowe put together, and then we modified that and changed a few other things about it. So you can see me do that too.
Yeah, I love us at the vanguard of sharing our ritual work the world. I'd actually have mixed feelings on it, but I'm doing it, and a bunch of us are doing it. So it's a boat, it's an engine I can't stop, and it's the true will just happening. So let it be.
Well, we want to get on par with the physical sciences. That's what we'd like to be able to do here. Yeah. Consciousness measure is a big block. The other block is the peer review thing. Yeah. It's like you got to share the information to get peer review in the first place. And everybody keeps their stuff inside their little orders and never shares it. It's like, our progress is going to be slow.
Plus, we, in some ways, also short circuit the ability of new age gurusism. If experts like us get on board, if we go online and we're like, yo, you can just download me doing this ritual for $5, it makes it a lot harder for those guru dudes to be like, I would show you this, however, and then
you mean I don't need to pay the master Goomba, $15,000 for a special ritual weekend to learn how to do the LBRP,
which involves a special sex initiation at the end with the master alone, which is always the case. It seems with every group everywhere. All the time. It'd be good like us, you, me, and the others. We all know who they are. They're just to cut that shit off at the knees so that people can learn from people who know what they're doing. Just even if it has to be online right now, and even if this is the new normal, so let it be. It's the Teilhard de Chardin's noosphere or whatever. This is a spirit web around the planet, and we're sharing, we're connecting. And I've seen cool things from online ritual works. That guy Ryan, you podcasted with, he did a Enochian thing on Zoom with Lon, and he said it was effective. And he does a lot of Enochian work. That's his main thing.
Cool.
So he found it was powerful, and I'm curious to explore cyber magic. So, I have a little free cyber guild people can go to at hermeticmysteryschool.com and just sign up, and I do a free monthly class, and we share and talk and all of that sort of stuff. And I'm excited to see. That
sounds pretty cool.
My idea was like to basically, because modern magic left me hanging dry, I felt, and so I was lucky to kick-ass temple to join that was started by Frater who's now known as Nineveh Shadrach and a great Arabic adept. And
Okay.
him and all the lineage from him.
Yeah, I've seen his books. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was my initiator. He gave me the motto Frater RC,
Okay, cool.
Rumpens Katane, which means broken of chains. And he was the guy who let me in. He fought hard to let me in at 15 because he was in at 16. And he trained the initial adepts and they trained me and then I trained others. And that's how we had this huge ass flourishing GD temple in Canada that kicked butt and was like 24/7 nonstop. It was just a best 7 years of my life in many ways, right? And then as all good things come to an end and move on, it was just but so I was like, how can I do my part to take the sort of system that Don Craig or any of these books lay out and make it, and now the opportunity to make it multimedia and online on a website in an active school, that's just right there. So that's what I did, man. That's a bit about my approach. And the fact that you're out there and doing stuff with Newcomb and all these things, like that's the bridge building I'm really excited about. And I'm glad you're excited about taking it to that next level further. Yeah. Like, let's fucking do it. And there's this weird ass occult revolution. Maybe it's caused because of TikTokers or Sabrina the witch coming back. I don't care why. I don't care why it's happening, you know. But
if we get what we want, does it matter, right?
You gotta cast a broader net to find some hardcore, awesome people, and amen for that. And the world's too up its own ass right now to really give a shit what any of us are doing with magic, right?
Yeah.
They're like, what are you doing? Like, well, they're like, yeah, I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, I know. People talk to you. Well, I don't know. Should I be out as a magical practitioner? I'm like, okay, look,
no one cares anymore. Yeah.
I've been out as a magical practitioner online with doing the blog since 2006. Okay. Yeah. I have never had anybody say anything bad to me about it, except the occasional email of, oh, you need to return to Christ, you're evil, you know, or whatever. But, you know, aside from that, it's like, I've had coworkers who found like, hey, yeah, that blog's really funny. It's like they read it and they're like, oh, they like the weird news stuff. It's like, oh yeah, this other stuff they just ignore. It's like I talk about the Western esoteric tradition. People are like, what's that? I mean, nobody knows. This is such a niche interest that
and the plethora of info and stuff on the internet now. Like, if you think the wrong people are going to pay attention to you, like, the wrong people don't care. They're too busy with everything else at their fingertips and eyeballs, right? Like, oh my God, like seriously,
exactly.
You'd be lucky if people not interested in magic started paying attention to your magic stuff. That would be amazing. Oh, yeah. Like, how did you do that? Did you do
and if they didn't like the magic, maybe they'd buy my fiction. I mean, who knows, right? You know,
yeah, I run commercials on this podcast. If as long as they're listening to the Sri Lankan commercials or whatever the app automatically inserts, that's cool, man. They're funding the rest of us to hopefully be able to have more physical events and retreats and conferences in the future. Because I really hope that we do have a chance to, like, you and me work together at retreats with people like
I'd be down for that. That'd be fun.
Ashy Chassis. And yeah, like we got to do it. Like, why don't we do a Enochian week at John D. Nebuchadnezzar's Hotel in Prague? You know, that's what we got to do.
That would be pretty awesome.
2022 for Yates's birthday. That's my plan. I want to do. That's where I want to stage his first Celtic Mysteries initiation, the first of the 5, which I've been working on for a long time. But I also want to do a whole Enochian magic component to that. And man, you reach there's people that would be perfect to come there and just like in the environment. When I first filmed myself doing the Call the Portal up in his tower looking out over Prague, I stumbled halfway through it. You can see me stumble over the word. And it's because there was like thud in the back of my head. And they were like, we're here. What do you want? You don't need to do that here. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it was a fun week of angel work.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Cool. I'm glad you're on board with this sort of this possible vision of the future that a lot of us are sharing, and it's good to hear that it's in the anima mundi, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what do you think are the major pitfalls and stumbling blocks to new people or avid students of our art these days?
You know, I think that so many years of things like horror movies and even, you know, stuff like the original Harry Potter movie. Okay. Yeah. People have this idea that these tiny little minutiae things about magic are so super important. It's like they have to get every little detail exactly right before they do anything. Yeah. And I have questions like that on the blog all the time. Well, but okay, so what about doing this versus that? And I'm like, honestly, I don't have two sample sizes to tell you which is more effective. Why don't you try it and see which one feels the best for what you want to do? They're pretty much equivalent. It doesn't seem to make too much of a difference which one you go with. But like, well, do you hold your hand like this or like this? I mean, it's literally like little stuff like that. Because, okay, so Harry Potter, right? Oh, it's not Leviosa, it's Leviosa,
Leviosa.
and that makes the difference. This tiny little pronunciation difference. When, for example, Enochian, it's like people have used, two or three completely different pronunciation systems working with Enochian and have still gotten good results. So obviously the little like tiny detailed, pronunciation isn't really that important. And the corollary to that is the thing that horror movies bring is this thing where, well, if you get one thing a little bit wrong, this horrible thing will get. It's like, if you get something wrong enough that a
Aratu,
ritual
Klasa, necktie. Necktie.
basically I said the words. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Shout out to Army of
Exactly.
Darkness, brother. Oh my
Yeah,
God. Yeah, baby.
exactly. And and so the thing about it is all this stuff, when a magical ritual, if you do enough things wrong that it just doesn't work, nothing happens. I mean, it's like you put a computer together the wrong way, it's not going to boot up. I mean, it's like that.
Yeah.
But people get this, oh, well, bad things could happen. How about you just follow the directions to your best of your ability, see if it works the way you want it to. If it, maybe confer with somebody who knows the ritual to make sure that you're interpreting the text, within, reason of what you're trying to do. And then, from there, well, if modifications occur to you, something feels like a more natural way to do it, why don't you just start doing your daily practices? And if they flow in a certain direction, flow them in a certain direction. But yeah, I think that's what it is. And I think that obsession with those details could be a big block in terms
Hamstring.
of
Yeah.
just getting in there and doing the work, because the secrets you got to learn in magic are experiential. It's about being in the circle. It's about actually doing it. It's about the interactions you have, the things you visualize, the things you experience. And none of that stuff is going to happen from like reading a book and then like asking like little detailed questions of people online if like this or that matters when it's really not important at all.
Yeah, the pronunciation things, like always, like we've always said, like fortunately the way we vibrate, especially my lineage, like you can't really tell whether I've had students walk out of classes or conferences, like when I've done large things at like pagan
Mm-hmm.
things, where I had a student walk out because I didn't pronounce one of the names of God the exact precise way that his teacher had taught him to, and I was like, well,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, I actually can read Hebrew and Aramaic, and I know exactly how these words were pronounced, not just then, but now and in between. And there's a wide spectrum of how they were pronounced, not to
Mm-hmm.
mention dialects. Then there's the fact that you're not pronouncing the word, you're vibrating the word. There's a reason they called it vibrating. And if you
Mm-hmm.
think you can notice the slight enunciations while you're vibrating at volume, you're not doing it right. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
don't worry about it. You're creating a psychosomatic, physical psychodrama reality and vibration through your body. You're affecting energies. You're not trying to, put in the code to a computer. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. It doesn't
So
need,
that's a
it's
good
not
point.
that precise.
I'm glad
Fortunately,
mentioned
your
that.
consciousness is not that precise, or we'd all be robots running around, running these deterministic algorithms. That would be bad.
Yeah, and like with Enochian pronunciation or Enochian pronunciation, I favor Enochian because that's how we said it. Plus, it's in Hebrew, it's Hanok, so it's like the guy was called not Enoch but Hanok, so I'm like Hanokian or Enochian. But whatever, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really matter at all. And especially my experience with the angels. Here's an experiential note. Aaron Leach loves making those and then saying that they equal the truth, which I have a problem with that approach.
Oh man,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a big problem.
it
I
really
love
is.
Aaron Leach, and I want to talk to him and hang out with him sometime and all of that stuff. But there's a like that's actually what that danger is actually what I wrote my main work on as a theologian on
Mm-hmm.
using psychoanalytic philosophy, semiotics, and mystical theology to look at the ethical problem of doing that, of basically
Mm-hmm.
saying I was curious in grad school about the issue of what does it mean when someone says they talk to God, especially like say a president or a
Mm-hmm.
general. What does it mean when they say, I talked to God and he said to do this?
Yeah,
To me, that
unverified personal gnosis.
structure
Yep.
is problematic. So I wrote a whole,
Mm-hmm.
it's right here. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Boom. Oh, well, that's my name, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whatever. There you go. That's my book on that exact issue that I find
Cool.
Aaron Leach keeps stumbling in. And you know, I'm all for personal experience. We all should be. There's been a lot of
Mm-hmm.
amazing observations that Ash and Chassan, that Stephen Skinner have made, like the reason we take ritual baths, the reason we perfume ourselves or use incense. Some of those reasons seem to be different than we might have thought, but actually effective. And when you test them out, it seems to be true. Like I've noticed that it is the smell of incense that the spirits seem to like. They do seem to confirm that for me. So you do. That's, I always was like, why do we need so much incense in the temple? And to me, it does seem to be the case that the spirits find that more of a habitable environment. You know, same reason for
Mm-hmm.
the ritual cleansing bath. And then there's the days of perhaps abstinence and purification leading up to it. They have new arguments for why those are things that are effective, and that's cool. And with the
Yeah.
Enochian, the thing that keeps coming to me is the spirits of all Enochian angels have always told me, it's like when I've asked them, they always say, look, we sort of understand you. Like it's like baby talk,
Mm-hmm.
however you pronounce it, Enochian. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that
Like,
was like Lon said. Well,
oh, did
imagine that
Lon
a
say that?
mouse. Well, this is his example.
Okay.
Imagine that you're sitting in your kitchen and a mouse comes in, it hops up on a chair, and it starts talking English. You're going to pay attention to it no matter how bad its accent is.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, mine was more like it's just like we're goo goo gaga, you know.
Hmm.
I want butter. And they're like, okay, we'll work with that. Yeah, cool.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, see, they actually communicate by pure thought, and the thing is, it's like you're kind of parsing it into language. So
Yeah.
it's like, and their consciousnesses are not that much like ours. So there's this whole kind of thing that happens. But yeah, I don't think precise pronunciation has a lot to do with it.
That does bring me to the other reason I'm convinced there is a connection between the Enochian realms and angels and DMT and mushrooms, is because on high doses of psilocybin and in any dose of DMT, the sound or language I seem to hear that comes emanates from another person's head or the spirits
Hmm.
themselves seems really similar to it. Like if you just imagine
Really?
the pronunciation, and yeah, like shockingly similar. And this is just a new
Hmm.
realization from very controlled experiments I've been doing. And I do have a cool book, which I can't even say the title.
That's
It's too cool coming
that's
up.
a that's a very
That's
interesting
interesting,
observation.
right? Yeah, but
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
it's only like, so I on Halloween I did a 5 dose heroic mushroom trip, coterminous with sunset to sunrise, 12 hours of solid ritual work. And you know,
Hmm.
that's something I've been doing for decades. I like doing these long, lengthy experiments where I,
Hmm.
alternate the same thing between a mirror. I have a copper scrying bowl I pounded out that I like to use for
Hmm.
water, and then a crystal ball, and then just straight vision, right? And I like to
Hmm.
test those things. And yeah, the sounds that I've always heard, and then looking at it compared to Enochian, especially how it's written, like even some of the shapes of the letters, all the
Hmm.
letters you notice are all sort of circular, vibey, very similar to
Hmm.
what you see on high doses of mushrooms, or maybe for some people low doses as well. And that's just worth exploring. That's just worth exploring.
Oh yeah, it's definitely an observation that is a potential signpost for future research. I would agree on that.
Right? Because what if Dee and Kelly were transcribing something they heard initially through large doses of psilocybin? It's totally
It's
possible.
possible.
Entirely possible. We don't know. And we probably won't ever
Hmm.
know, but we can do with the experiments ourselves, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, exactly. And better to do the experiments anyway than, yeah, maybe it is, maybe it isn't historically, but
Yeah.
do the experiments, get the
Yeah.
results, you got the results.
Yeah. I mean, if they could only, like, a lot of people are doing this golden age syndrome these days. Like, oh, I've seen people in Golden Dawn forums. I only dip my head in for 1 second because, come on, Facebook. But people are, I see people lamenting, oh, if only we had magical schools like in the days of the Golden Dawn or the original Freemasons. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you
They're
talking about?
all over the
We have
place. Yeah.
way more in-depth hardcore work in schools and systems and temples and lodges and covens and drum circles and circle jerks and everything you could possibly
The
want. You want to join a
the
Gnostic sect? Yeah,
original,
you'll find one.
yeah, the original Golden Dawn had about 350 members or something like that, is what I read at one point. It's like it was not a large organization.
Yeah.
And I
Our,
mean, there are so many more people involved in that stuff today.
yeah. Yeah, the Homsey Golden Dawn International, we were way over 1,000 members. That's why we were able to do international events, 7 days of straight
Mm-hmm.
magic for no money. You could just fly in,
Mm-hmm.
be put up,
Yeah.
not even have money for food, not have to
Mm-hmm.
pay anything. That's the value of a large group, is you can facilitate
Mm-hmm.
large events. Then there's the human component always comes in, and anytime you have a group of people, we all know what you're dealing with, right? So that's always there, but there's upsides to it.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
definitely people lamenting that if only we could have magic like it was 100 or 500 or 2,000 years ago, it just seems crazy to me. Like
It really does.
even the Egyptians would be envious of what we have access to today in our
Oh
research.
yeah.
Like, it's like, oh, they had the pyramids and secret technology. Like, we still have the pyramids, and we have both secret technology, magic and other shit, and we have technology.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, we might be perceiving dark matter this year.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty awesome.
That's pretty awesome, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
so for all those people who think that the golden age is over, it's like, no, man, it's just begun.
No, the golden age is now. It's totally now.
Right
All
now.
the texts are out there, man. You want to study anything, you
You
can
don't even have
find
to
it.
pay
It's
for them,
like, yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I do, and you should too. You should too. Go buy
Oh
Scott
yeah. I
Stenwick's
don't
books.
pirate magic books, but yeah. So
Yeah.
it's
Well, if you have a physical copy, sometimes you need to do a search on the thing, but whatever. There's
oh yeah,
many of them
no, of
around.
course. And it's just yeah, it's the whole thing of I just find it funny that oh, you occult authors are like all so rich. And well, it's like, okay, so I actually am pretty well off, but not from selling occult books.
Okay,
You
yeah.
know, from being an
That's
information
from your Gnostic
technology
sex
consultant,
cult, right?
we make a good living.
Yeah, of course you do,
Um,
man.
yeah, but yeah, so it's like no, it doesn't have anything to do with the small number of occult books I sell every year.
Right. But we thank you for your service in making them, and it's a good thing. The other thing I hear people complain about is, like, you can't find any reputable magicians much at all, blah blah blah, and all the initiates from the systems are scandalous people who are not, as Skinner's mentioned this, are not any example of any kind of sainthood at all. But I like to respond to that as like, well, I've actually, from my experience in the initiatory worlds, there's a lot of people who I would say do actually sort of border on sainthood a little bit. Like, I think the
Hmm.
concept is pretty ridiculous in the first place, but
Hmm.
there are those people, but they're not on Facebook. They're not on YouTube. Guess why? Because all this shit that we do takes a lot of time. And if you're also running initiations or teaching classes, you don't have time for that public
Hmm.
noise. Yeah, the great people are out there doing it. And if someone's out in the public sphere talking about it, chances are they're not doing that much ritual work. And I'm aware of what I'm saying when I say that on my
Hmm.
podcast. Yeah, if I'm podcasting, I'm
Yes.
not doing it, but I'm not in a position to have a space right now. So it really works out
Hmm.
this since COVID. And that'll change. That'll change. And if you don't see
Hmm.
me doing podcasts more than once a week, eventually, you'll know the reason why, right?
Well, there you go. Right.
It's
There's
because
better things to do. It's a thing. Yeah.
magic is a big commitment. Like my years in the
Hmm.
in like, it was not uncommon to do 2-3 hours of ritual work in a night, easy, if not more. It's that amount of time and dedication that people do put into it, and those people are out there, so those people listening can know you can find those people who do this stuff
Hmm.
that seriously and are testing it and exploring new realms. And Scott, you're apparently one of them, man.
Well, I like to think I am. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
basically I'm a guy who likes to do cool stuff, and that's kind of where I'm coming at.
yeah.
It's a technology. It involves consciousness in the mind. I find that whole thing fascinating, and I like to make stuff happen. It's cool.
So maybe you and me can find ourselves one day at the top of John Dee's tower on a bunch of mushrooms.
Well, that might be an interesting thing. Well, now I'm not going to say might. That would be an
Would be
interesting thing.
interesting, but
Yes.
we'll
It
see.
depends. Well, it depends on. And by the way, I don't mean that in a Minnesota interesting. So Minnesotans have this thing. I don't know if you're oh, that's interesting. What we're really thinking is, I hope you die. We're like famous for that.
That's
Okay.
what
And I
Canadians
don't
mean
mean
when
it
we
that
say
way.
sorry. When we're like, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. Like, how do you get
Well,
a Canadian to apologize? Bump into them.
Yeah, well, we're on that border,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah, well, exactly. When we say
But
when you plow through a pile of Canadians and you hear everyone that you shoulder say sorry, that's not what we mean. What we mean is what you said. Fuck off and
yeah,
die. Fuck off and die. Fuck off and die. Go fuck yourself and die. Hi, fuck you, die. Yeah.
but
But
no,
we
when
say,
I say interesting, I mean legitimately
yes,
interesting.
yes.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
well, that would be interesting, and that would be a very cool thing to have happen. Hey, if we can get if we can get the key to the tower for a whole night and have a safe space, as they say, why not? That's what happened last time I was there doing this stuff, and yeah, it was
awesome.
pretty phenomenal, man. I'm just excited. I think the magical community is not taking advantage of that place, and it's a cool little bar with all alchemical stuff on the wall and drinks that are all it
Oh man,
flowing
they
over with
totally should.
smokes. Oh yeah. So, but no, it's up to us. Like the rental costs there for Prague is nothing, and the hotel attached to it is
Hmm.
run by an American dude who has a very slow down season in the colder months. So it's like they're totally game. It just requires us to be like, yo, can people save up to go to Prague for a week or something like that? And that's totally doable. So I'm not keeping that under wraps so that I can just take advantage of it. I think people should take advantage of it. Like I'd love
Oh yeah,
I
no,
if
definitely
someone like you and
keep me
other
posted
people,
on that.
yeah, like if other people, well, let's team up and make it happen. So like we only need like 30 people paying a very, very reasonable amount to make it feasible.
Hmm.
Like because if we're as like you said, we're not in it for we're not going full Griffin extortion on it. Like, it's
Right,
really
yeah.
you can make it quite reasonable.
Well, each of you will pay 25, no, $49,000. It's 49 in the Benorum. And
No,
so
Griffin would
what
say
we should
69
do
because he
is,
knows what you know what he's really thinking. No, sorry.
well, yeah, it's like, yeah, yeah, stay clear of you, Griffin, and all of that stuff. But yeah,
I don't like talking about him anymore, but it happens. It just happens.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, but yeah, so hopefully, we'll adventure more in that well. And how cool would it be if Enochian
it would be
was
cool.
the mushroom language unlocked? That would be so true because that would be such that would be science and physics linking to magic through a plant. And what a plant other than the fungus? Like that would tie in the whole all
Maybe you could finally
stamets.
translate Liber Loga.
Mm,
Liber Loga is not the same thing as the language of the keys. It's some other language,
wow.
but it's like, and it's never been translated. There are no English translations. It would be interesting if somebody could come up with something that was verifiable against the text. That would be a really interesting discovery. That would be a big deal in Enochian magic.
Wow, I can feel it's not my calling, but like so shout out to whoever else might feel a tickle from their higher genius to do something like that. The rest of us would be appreciative, right? It has to be done well, of course, like all things.
Hmm.
Um,
Not the Hay Necronomicon. That was what George Hayes said he was doing in his Necronomicon. Oh, he translated Liber Loga and it's Lovecraft's Necronomicon, and it was just a complete scam. So, yeah,
you gotta love that stuff.
something better than that.
Enochian pronunciation. You stick with what system?
I do my best to conform to the denotations that are in the actual text of the keys from the British Museum. For the most part, the words are pronounced pretty much how they're written.
Yeah,
There really isn't a lot of variation. He will sometimes put a dash that represents an extra syllable. He will, and there's a lot of, like, one of the things that the differences between how, like, Aaron's angelical language books parse it out, and how I parse it out, is that he uses a lot of soft G's and soft C's, and I don't.
mm,
And one of the things that I discovered that I talk about in Mastering the 30 Airs is, you're going through the key is, if you look at, there's some spots in the Aether key, and then you actually go back and then you see it in a few other places where D in his notes used a specific superscript to indicate that. So what he would do is he would have a C and have an S above it if you were talking about a C that was pronounced like an S. And if you had a G that was pronounced soft, he would have a superscript DG written above it in his handwriting. Other places, he doesn't have that, which
yeah,
implies hard sounds everywhere
yeah,
else.
yeah.
So I think that's the correct interpretation.
Interesting. I did a when I was in Portal. Me and Martin did a little survey of the different options and compiled it. It's an e-manuscript on an ebook on Kindle that you can see. I'll send you
Hmm.
a thing of it where we just broke down the options and the logic behind it all. And his and Zaleski's order ran with using actually our sort of conclusions of that. But what's
Hmm.
really interesting about the pronunciation debate, aside from the whole fact that, you know, these things sound, when you vibrate them, it's not exactly enunciated anyway.
Hmm.
But the scholarship that recently came out from a notebook by Westcott or someone like that, I think it was Skinner,
Hmm.
someone talked about it, where it shows that in the Golden Dawn, they didn't just do the one thing everyone always thought they did in the Golden Dawn, which is the thing that people laugh about so much. But in fact, they
Hmm.
do a mixture of what would be called short pronunciation, and then sort of a emphasized, emphatic, like zod,
And long
long
pronunciation for like
pronunciation.
divine names.
It shows that they, yeah, but what obviously, if you know they were doing both those things, then you also
Hmm.
can just obviously tell that they were mixing them together as they felt
Yeah.
in their workings they should. And that's what
Yeah,
I
because
go with.
the Zod thing works like that. When you
It's
pronounce Z as
powerful.
Zod,
It's very
it's like
powerful.
it's the angel specifically explained it. Well, if it's pronounced like Z, it's this. If it's pronounced like Zod, it means this related to God. So
Mm.
it's like, okay, so in a God name, you pronounce it Zod. Otherwise, you pronounce it Z, or a Z dash is a Zod notation in D is. If it's just a Z into a word, it's like Z dash is Zod. So Z dash OL is Zodol, for example.
Yeah, Lon likes to tease us Golden Dawners and say, oh, every time they see a Z, they say Zod. But that's not true, folks. But it is powerful for emphasis.
Hmm.
It is powerful for the use of emphasis in certain
Yeah,
syllables.
in God names, I always do it. Otherwise, I
Yeah,
generally don't, unless otherwise notated.
that's awesome. Yeah, so so for people who are wasting their time with that debate, put that baby to bed and just move on with the next ritual.
Yeah,
Yeah, don't worry about it too much. Last
it
person,
seems like most Enochian magicians are going with shorter pronunciation, and that's been kind of a trend that's been
it's been a
happening
trend.
for
Yeah,
about the last 20 years. So
yeah, not a big deal in my opinion. And here
no.
again, back to mushroom and DMT land. It sound like it only sounds similar if I was to imagine the Enochian in that sort of mixture.
Hmm.
Like it's a multi-dimensional language that we just
Hmm.
can only we can see only as much of it as we can only hear as much as our
Hmm.
orthography allows, as our minds contemplate. We're limited linguistic creatures, even especially as, you know, white dudes in the West, right? There's a certain range of sounds we're familiar with and other sounds we're not. And if we
Right.
were
I
from a
mean,
different
it's
culture, we would see this orthography and maybe have a wider range of sounds that we can manufacture in our mouth and vocal cords that we wouldn't even think
yeah.
of. And other races
Yeah,
would
it's like,
look at that and
well,
see like,
you
oh
can
no,
train
that sounds like
yourself.
that.
I mean, I
Yes.
talk about that in the book. It's like, okay, so old son of Borsk Gohoyad Balt. Borsk is one syllable. I train myself to say that. It's not a normal syllable that you hear in
Of
English.
course.
Yeah.
See,
And how
whereas
you, how,
I obviously do, you know, what you're doing. Oh, else I would do well sonuf veorasaji goho yada balta alexa
right. Yeah.
komananu to be to him
Hmm.
zodakata
Yep.
zodakata ora
But Borsk,
zodakata.
you can totally say it.
That's cool. I'm
But
gonna try that.
you got to teach yourself to here. Okay. So here's how you train yourself.
Yeah, let's do it.
So,
Let's do it.
um,
Isn't this fun?
okay. So ORSK is a pretty easy sound for like Torsk. Okay. It's
Course.
like a Norwegian fish. Okay. That's pretty easy for an English speaker to say.
Yeah.
Okay. So say Vorsk with a K.
Borsk.
Okay. And then start bringing your tongue back until it sounds more like a Z. Vorzg.
Vorsk. Vorsk.
And you practice that, you
Vorsk.
get better at it.
Beautiful.
And it takes a
Wow.
little while. But yeah, so you could do that. And so what I do is I look at, all right, if I hit something that I really can't pronounce, I'm like, all right, could I pronounce that? And let me look. So what are some similar consonant sounds? Okay, so start with this, and then to turn it to this, what do I have to do with my mouth to change the sound? And then I practice that until I get that down, and then I can just do it.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Yes, I think it's very helpful for people to study a bit of phonology, just like, you know, learning what alveolar, interdental,
Oh yeah.
alveopalatal sounds, how
Hmm.
they're made, because you can actually, when I teach languages, I'm a German speaker, do Irish, Hebrew, Aramaic, and I had to learn where the tongue positioning are and where the teeth. When you
Hmm.
just tell someone physically what to do, then it works. Then you can do it. It's very helpful to know that and just think about it that way. You can research that shit on YouTube, I'm sure, really fast. And I think people should all
Yeah.
look into that a little bit, just if they care about this stuff. If they don't, then that's
Hmm. Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, we're in
It
the
require
weeds with some of
it
this.
requires some dedication and focus. That's
Yeah.
definitely true.
It's so very exciting to know that you're heptarch. That how did I not equate heptarchia with bonorum for all these years? Well, that's one of those things. I just
No, the
yeah.
diagram says tabula bonorum, and the grimoire
Yeah.
it's in is the Heptarchia Mystica.
Well,
So
yeah,
yeah.
like I've only been expanding my like I've just for last 25 years just been doing basic GD Enochian work, right? That's it.
Hmm.
So it's only the last year and a half I've been expanding my Enochian horizons. And the
Hmm.
reason for that was simply because there's other things to study, and it's like,
Hmm.
I was always aware that in Enochian I would have to take time later on, and I had the joy or the opportunity, the treat, especially
Hmm.
once I was more a Sham Angels, pure Kabbalah guy, Tatwas and stuff like that. And working, of course, for me with things like the vault is a big thing that I don't talk about.
Hmm.
I'm not going to, but that's fine. That takes years. But exploring Enochian is a real gem, real beautiful thing. And then you even have all the grimoires. So there's a lot to do in magic, and you don't have
Hmm.
enough time in your lifetime to do it all. So it's sort of like nice to focus on one thing and really get what you can get out of it, bring it into your practice, make it a living part of your life. And that's what I'm now starting to do with grimoires and Enochian. And it's been a joy. It's been a joy. So yeah.
Yeah, I
Thanks.
really have enjoyed doing Enochian for all the years I've been doing it. It's a really cool system.
So cool. Yeah, it's a made up language basically. It's like, w- people are like, that's just like some language. It's just a made up language that some two guys made up. It's like, yeah, exactly. That's just like the
And it
most
works.
magical thing I could ever imagine. Like 500 years ago, these two guys just made some shit up and everyone like loves it and it works.
Yep.
um,
Very
but
cool.
I also, of course, every experience I keep having confirms more and more for me that it might be this psilocybin spirit multidimensional language. I'm not going to go full leech and be like, that's therefore it's the truth and you should accept it because the spirits told me. But that's my
Right. But
suspicion.
if
And
it's an
believing that
inkling that you've
makes,
got, you test it out, you experiment with it.
yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. Exactly. I hope this doesn't sound like we've bashed leash at all because I don't think we have. We're just, we love that guy, right?
Well, I mean, it's like the problems with them that the disagreements that I've had with them are, disagreements. It's like I don't bear him any ill will or anything like that. It's just, no, I just disagree with some of these conclusions.
Well, I really love that he emphasizes spirits as real beings, and I really love that he
Hmm.
puts a primacy on personal experience. Like that's what we are
Hmm.
all
Yep.
saying. We are all saying that. The only
Yeah, I
problem
agree
is
with
when
him on
we
that 100%.
extrapolate a subjective reality or subjective truth, as I would say in my book, and that's from like psychoanalytics, like Jacques Lacan and Alain Badiou, the French ethicist. The idea of extrapolating a psychological truth and imposing it on someone else is what he would call is
Hmm.
the evil of tyranny, the ethical
Hmm.
fallacy of tyranny. It's to take because ethics are subjective and experiences
Hmm.
of truth are subjective, not factual truth, but experiences of truth, moments of
Right.
truth in your life where you're like, I am a magician. Good, you're a
Hmm.
magician. That doesn't mean everyone should become magicians, right?
Right.
you know, you realize that you are a progressive or whatever that means. That therefore it doesn't mean everyone should be,
No.
right? Yeah. So that's the ethical issue I find with the danger of subjectivism and spiritual experiences that needs to be watched because gurus are
Hmm.
problems and New Ageism has caused a lot of problems, and we need to, as
Oh
magicians,
yeah,
at least try and be some
definitely.
kind of foil to that. We have a calling to be some kind of foil to that because magicians started as scientists who had reached the edges of their knowledge and needed
Hmm.
to explore beyond, and that's what magicians are. We're
Yeah.
we're, we're the vanguard of science, not the kooks in the corner, humping a crystal.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
glad you like that.
Yeah,
My only goal on this
that's funny.
podcast is to make my guests laugh. So thank you for being a great guest. I even got Ashen Chassan laughing, which at beginning, the first hour, I didn't think I would because he's such a hardcore stern dude. But
Oh
but
yeah.
but he laughed when I called him Ashy Chassis. So yeah, a lot of
Okay.
you guys are great. All of you heroes of the occult world who are out there doing your hardcore thing, and we're really lucky to have all of you guys. And I thank you very much personally for being out there and giving so much of yourself as you do. And I hope you write more
Well,
crazy
Thanks for
novels
having
too.
me on the show. It's been
Yeah.
fun.
I mean, normally I talk as long as people want to talk, but I feel like this is probably a good place to sort of leave it.
Yeah. Yeah. I probably should
Yeah, this has
do
been
some other
good.
stuff this
It's been a
evening,
good
but
thing. Do you want to
yeah,
let
no,
me?
it's a good talk. Keeps
Would you?
going. I'd come on the show again.
Let's do it. Maybe even have a third person and get into some stuff. Who knows? Maybe.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's leave on this though. Give me your like sales pitch for Ipswich, because that sounds like really fun, and that sounds like something I'd want to read pretty soon. So, why is it called Ipswich?
Okay,
What's the
because
story,
much of
and why should
so
people go buy it right now?
all right, much of the story takes place in Ipswich, Massachusetts,
Yeah.
which is so some of it is kind of riffing a little bit on the Salem Halloween kind of hysteria. And I decided, well, I'll have it be Ipswich, which is so it's not Salem, but it's like kind of there. And the idea is
It's a
that
cooler word too,
yeah.
Ipswich.
So anyway, so the story is about it's the second book of my guild series. Arcana is the first one, but you don't have to read Arcana to follow Ipswich.
Really?
Some of the stuff in Ipswich that's mentioned is like backstory stuff from Arcana, but there's enough in the book that you could read it without really having the background of the first book. Okay. And so what it is so it's about so the main character is she's like this rich party girl, and and her family, unbeknownst to her, long ago was part of this magical lineage that was part of this magical order called the guild, and they drifted away from that a long time ago. But she takes this experimental drug at a party, and she wakes up, and all of a sudden basically she's a wizard and she has no idea how to deal with it.
I
And
love it.
so
Oh, I
and
love it.
so
Oh my
then
God.
so she decides she then has some spiritual awareness, and she is contacted by the ghost of her mother who died the year previously under mysterious circumstances, who says, no, you need to help me because I'm trapped in this town of Ipswich, okay, which is where she died. So main character, she goes out to Ipswich and tries to find this out. She's noticed by the guild, who are like, "Oh, we can detect that you're doing magic. What happened?" kind of thing. So she gets kind of mixed up in that, and it turns out that there is like a rival magical order that is like mostly gone, but like the last remnants of it have this stuff going on in Ipswich, and there's this stuff related to the drug and distributing the drug, and there are some twists in it and stuff, and I don't really want to spoil it too much, but you can take a look at it on Amazon. It's got a blurb and stuff like that, and it's fun.
Yeah, I'd like something like that. I have a novel on Amazon that's in print under a pen name. I recently let slip that I have pen name novels out there, but they're just things I usually wrote so I could read them, and they're not
Hmm.
edited or perfected, but I threw them out there. This was one I wrote while I was in Belfast, living at an oasis, teaching OTO people with the adepts there. Were like, yo, we actually don't know the stuff that you know in the Golden Dawn.
Hmm.
Would you share it with us and teach us stuff? And that was actually something I wanted to tell you, just because it shows this,
Hmm.
there is this camaraderie building that I think we should foster. And it was really cool. I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, well, I shouldn't teach OTO people. That's a different system. They're like, no, like we don't even study what you're doing. When like when you would go and do a in Watchtower and SBR SIRP
Hmm.
or something to invoke thought, we don't do that. No, like we might do
Hmm.
something else. So I wrote her a little novella.
I
It's very
do a
similar.
GRP, but yeah,
Yeah, right.
I mean, and
So
actually no, for Thoth, yeah, Thoth actually, yeah, if I were doing it under Mercury, actually be a GRH for planet, but yeah.
yeah, depending on what
Anyway.
you want to do, there's a lot of options. And
Hmm.
we were Temple to Hootie, so of course we've done Thoth
Hmm.
stuff up the like we do have done invocations where there's a person becoming the god in all four quarters. One's the baboon,
Hmm.
one's the emerald headed, one's the white nemesis. We've
Hmm.
done all that. So there's lots of versions. The baboon one's a lot of fun, but
We did one like that where each person was one of the four Enochian kings. That was pretty cool.
oh, dude, that's so
That worked really well. You might want to check that out.
cool. Prague, here we come. Yeah, man. Yeah, buddy. Cool. So yeah, I wrote this. I wrote my girlfriend at the Oasis when I lived there. This little novella about a very similar sort of narrative to what you had, but I like your take on it more. So I have to read that. Mine was like one order's like falling and chaos magicians are taking over, so they had to quickly initiate someone straight into like master magus so they could help fight against the rise of hedge witches and
Mhm.
chaos magic. Fun stuff.
Okay.
I love this genre of literature, like real magic novels sort of thing. So I'm really glad you did that. And I like the whole perspective. That's great. What a great pitch. So folks, Scott Stenwick, Ipswich, and many other great books to find, man. Thank you for coming on Magic Without Fears. Find us, folks, online, exclusive episodes, magicwithoutfears.com, video options occasionally on the website, so check it out. And thanks for putting up with the randomly inserted commercials in foreign languages that help me stay afloat. If you really want to support me, subscribe for $50 a year or $7 a month, and go buy all of Scott's Enochian books because they really are something special. Thank you very much.
All right.
It's like
Oh, well, thank you very
real
much. It's
pleasure.
great being on. Yeah,
And if you want
definitely a
the
real
best
pleasure.
possible survey in 7 days of Enochian magic, Jason Newcomb's masterclass is the best introduction to Enochian magic across the spectrum, gives you everything except for pure GD practice, which is good because that's something that lots of GD temples cover, books cover, and I cover. So yeah, that's just a great piece of the puzzle for people for $100 to do that whole 7-day thing with Scott Stenwick, who's one of the teachers. And actually, just as we go out, the cloth that people, you all had a bit on the cloth that you put, the prismatic cloth on the Enochian table, and you all described it the same, but then you all had different cloths. Do you have a preference? Like I saw, my favorite was the rainbow colored cloth because I was like, that appeals to the colorful Golden Dawn adept in me, because you know we're all about the pretty colors, right? Like, we're quite vivid with our colors. But
Yeah.
yours was a more sheer, sheeny one. Do you have a theory about one being more correct, or just is it preference? And
All
rainbows
right.
is
So
behind you.
my
The
my my
last
take
question,
on that
sorry.
is this. So the stuff that that Aaron is quoting about the cloth being multicolored is he's digging through the conversations and the diaries that went into the Heptarchia Mystica, and he's finding this thing where the angels are talking about how it's kind of hard for it to really be any one color or whatnot. However, what Dee did when he arranged the Heptarchia Mystica in 1588 is he went ahead with the changeable red and green cloth, which is what I use. So this is John Dee. Take the material now. How do I think it works that he actually put that into a grimoire? It's the only part of the Enochian system that's been assembled into the grimoire. And the material in there does not talk about a multicolored cloth. It's conversations with the angels from the shrines, from the sessions. I mean, so it's in there, but in my opinion, it didn't make the cut. So that's why I go with the changeable red and green that's mostly red.
All right. So it would be very true to Golden Dawn amalgam fashion for me to just go with the pretty rainbow color one because I like it. That's very true to the Golden Dawn vibe. Hey, it's like, we like it like this. Let's have this. We'll just change this. Why? Because we like it.
Well, experiment with it, see if it
Well,
works. If it
yes,
works, it works.
that's of course the thing that people should take away from this. And you experiment with the GD system, we're like, wow, that's the second most effective version, apart from what you do. So that's really
Mhm.
cool. I mean, amen, dude. You're fucking awesome. I love you. I wish you the best, and let's talk soon.
It sounds good. I'd be happy to come on again. Let me know what works.
Live long and prosper, buddy.
Yeah, you
We'll
too.
talk.
And
Speaking,
thank
we'll
you very
find
much.
that D quote if it's the last thing we do, the Kelly drug quote. Will someone find us that? We'll find it. We got to find that. We'll have a
Oh,
party. We'll have a happy hour when we do.
I'll find it. I just have to buy the book, and then I know it's 1583, so I just speed read 1583. I'll find it.
I will await your message,
But
and
yeah,
with a unopened bottle of celebratory something, maybe
well, there
mushrooms.
you go.
All right, peace, dude.
Yeah,
Cheers.
peace to you as well.
Much love.
Mhm.